Yeah, nothing will explode, will it? Hit the button, see what happens. Yeah, the science fiction gambit. Yeah. Yeah. Fiction gambit. Yeah. Yeah. Fiction gambit. Yeah.
Okay. Can you, if you link it to me, I'll see if I can keep an eye on the chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not being able to see. Yeah, that may or may not be a good thing depending on how it all goes. Sometimes some streams you think, oh, I'm so glad I can't see the chat. Others you might think, yeah, actually, it would be nice to see the chat. Yeah. Mm. Mm.
All right. Did you give me a link? Oh, okay. All right. Sure. I have that up, I think, somewhere. Or I did. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I got it. All right. To watching.
Yeah.
Oh, nope. Hi, some random geek. Hi. Metro Rug.
John, how are you? Yeah.
Okay, so it says you're no sound from Garrett. Everybody else they can hear.
That's a bit weird. Yeah, that's a bit weird. Yeah. Yeah. Is it to do with if your screen? Yeah, we're hearing what you hear. So you've probably got your speakers down or whatever, or so you don't get feedback or whatever. Uh, Depends how much feedback it creates, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so hang on. You know, some random geek is actually usually pretty good about. Okay, he's blaming YouTube as well. All right. Hmm. I'm asking the chat for help.
Yes. Yeah.
The sign of a true professional.
Yeah, it's like in a theater. It's like in a theater if the actors start asking the audience what the lines are, or yeah, it's like that. Yeah.
All right.
What's next? Uh, well,
So yeah, YouTube is being weird today. Yeah, so we have a situation where Garrett is, for some reason, just not being picked up here. And we're not sure because I have no idea, no clue whatsoever.
yeah, we can hear him.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Garrett is doing a window share. And okay, you'll have to keep say it say it in pieces so I can understand. I'm explaining it to the chat. Okay, so it's not putting it out as an output. Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking something you could.
You can see how good I am at this.
If you have another headphone output, you could possibly plug that into an input on, depending what kind of audio gear you've got.
Is there an option in the Google Meet to circumvent this issue?
So
Does anyone know?
Uh,
This issue of the screen share and the outputs and the inputs.
There's settings. Oh, look at. No, not a lot.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
In the audio mixer, does mic auxiliary have the volume slider turned all the way down? No. We can hear him. I hear Garrett fine. I could tell you what he's saying. In the OBS window, she's asking.
We could just. I'm just going to Google it and see if anyone's ever. Although, what do you? This is the thing with like, what do you even Google?
They're saying this is definitely a problem with Google Meet.
Yeah.
It definitely isn't a problem with Google Meet. It's in the OBS. Okay. It is in OBS.
Oh, okay.
So okay. In the meantime, yeah. So, hi everyone. It's been a while. How's everyone been? In the chat or on the stream, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been okay.
So, discussing the history of the YouTube feminist social justice community. That is, it's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do a post-mortem. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so Garrett has just asked Andy, while we were sitting here quietly, Garrett has asked Andy to describe the YouTube atheist community and the split that happened and the resulting stuff. So,
yeah, cool. I've just quickly, I found a video that says how to share video with audio in Google Meet. That might be worth looking at if you've. That came up when I googled Google Meet screen share YouTube. That came up, so maybe have a quick look at that. But oh god, yeah, good point. Unless you've got another device or something. Anyway, all right, but yeah, okay, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. Well, I think a lot of it starts with Thunderfoot. I think, or at least for me, that's where it all started to be a thing. Like, I mean, Thunderfoot originally had done videos about tackling creationism, although looking back, it was always drama oriented. His video series was entitled "Why Do People Laugh at Creationists?" It wasn't like Aaron Ra's series, which was called "The Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism," which is a bit more of a kind of matter of fact thing. It was more. It was like I'm going to poke fun at, and I'm going to provoke and try and upset a group of people. And I don't think any of us really cared because they were creationists, so we didn't really pick up on that perhaps as much as we should have done. But eventually, like, he started showing signs of Islamophobia as well, which some people were quick to apologize for him, for make excuses for him about, and say, "Oh, I don't think he really means that." But I mean, some of the stuff he said was pretty bad, and that caused a kind of division. And he had that debate with D-Land and Cole about it, and then eventually, suddenly, out of the blue, he suddenly started caring about feminism and video games, which was a bit of a shock to me because I've been subscribed to his channel for a while. I was like, all of a sudden there's this video about how this woman called Anita Sarkeesian, who I've never heard of before, is wrong about video games. And I was a bit like, oh, right. I don't know. I didn't know you knew anything about video games, Thunderfoot, or I didn't know this was an issue you knew anything about. And, clearly he didn't, because we've all seen, and this sort of started causing, a lot of division. The other thing that happened, which happened before this, was something called Elevator Gate.
Hey, can you?
Which
I think maybe I can be heard now. Possibly. Is that?
Oh, can people hear Garrett? He's talking.
I just changed a setting, and I'm getting stuff coming up on the meters now in OBS that wasn't before.
Oh, they hear you!
Yay! Woo!
We managed to overcome YouTube's incredibly terrible modern system for this.
Yeah.
Eventually.
All right. He says that you need to raise the audio levels.
Yeah. I noticed it's a bit quiet. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay.
That's my next thing I have to figure out how to do. So keep going, Andy.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that happened before, I think, Thunderfoot was Elevator Gate, which was this incident where Rebecca Watson was at some atheist convention or other, and some guy propositioned her while she was in an elevator.
At 4 a.m.
Which is at 4 a.m., yes. Which is a confined space. yeah, someone she doesn't know. And yeah, I think it's reasonable that she was a bit uncomfortable about that. All she did was put up a video, sort of politely but firmly saying, "Please, guys, don't do that." She didn't mention the guy by name or call for any kind of, in inverted commas, witch hunt or any of this shit. That's all she said. She didn't call the guy a Actually, I think she did sort of mention it was misogynistic or whatever, but she didn't really. But I don't know. I don't think she said anything particularly bad about him. She just said she'd rather people didn't do that. Which I think is reasonable, and and Richard Dawkins ended up making fun of her for this because it's not as bad as the suffering a woman would undergo in Saudi Arabia, and that's an argument a grown man from Oxford University made. Yeah,
he wrote he wrote an open letter to Rebecca Watson called "Dear Muslima."
Yeah.
And it was what, like, because I was just gonna say the first channel I found in what would sort of already was the YouTube social justice feminist community was of yours was your first channel I found was yours, and I remember a video, one of the early videos I watched on your channel was the one about relative privation fallacies.
Yes.
And it's like,
exactly.
That is so much what Richard Dawkins did there, like so clearly. Like, yes, Richard, just because it wasn't the worst thing that has ever happened to a woman in the world doesn't mean it's like not worth maybe casually bringing up as a thing. Like,
Well, this is the thing. If you look at the sort of stuff people like Richard Dawkins complain about as well, a lot of it is very, quite trivial. I mean, but something that I've noticed a lot of new atheists complain about is things like the Ten Commandments being hung on display in courtrooms. And I think, that's not that's a first world problem. That's not as bad as what you would suffer if you were an atheist in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, you could be stoned to death. That's on balance. Yeah, it's much better to just see the Ten Commandments hung in a courtroom. But at the same time, though, you should still bring the issue up because it's part of a bigger problem. That's the thing. It's not that in itself. It's not that seeing the Ten Commandments in a courtroom itself is causing you any harm. It's part of an underlying problem that Christians in a country like America see themselves as the default. They see their principles, their values as the kind of default values, and everyone else's values as kind of deviations from that, or things that have some sort of burden of proof to meet. Whereas Christian ones are like the default ones that we can just assume everyone's happy with, and it basically speaks to the fact that Christians have that sort of social privilege and legal privilege a lot in some places in the world, and that's all it is. It's just speaking to. It's part of a bigger problem. So it's like when Rebecca Watson gets propositioned in an elevator. It's not the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone, but it's generally part of a bigger problem. Certain men do have a certain sense of entitlement and a certain lack of respect for boundaries. And it's not all men, but it's too fucking many though. And that's the point. It's like, well done if you've never propositioned anyone in an elevator. You are amazing. Have a fucking cookie. Go you.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but Garrett, apparently people can only hear you in their left earbud.
Yeah.
And what I am hearing from Jamie J is that if you click on the gear next to your mic in the audio mixer section on OBS, go to advanced audio properties and click the mono checkbox. That will be good, I guess.
Sweet.
So thank you, Jamie J.
Yeah, I would say, back in the days that I'm talking about as well, there was much better and easier to use software for doing things like we're trying to do now. I feel like such an old person now, like with old people trying to figure out this newfangled technology. But the other thing was, The Amazing Atheist was one of the people who sort of gave Rebecca Watson a hard time for this. And he had at the time a playlist on his channel called Anti-Feminism, which was just basically a lot of very generic dude bro kind of shit about feminism that just showed no real research or understanding of it. It was, I mean, this was very much where a lot of these divides started happening. We started seeing anti-feminism sort of becoming a kind of staple thing in YouTube atheism. Like it was, yeah, the way they've always sold it is they've tried to frame feminism as a religion, and therefore, if you are a feminist, you're not a atheist. And but they've accused all these people like, you know, atheism plus of trying to change the definition of atheism. And I think, well, no, if you're if you're calling feminism a religion and therefore feminists can't be atheists, then you're the one changing the definition of atheism. But not everyone was as blatant as that. Not everyone literally said that. Some people were a bit smarter. They said feminism is like a religion, which is a sort of way of still trying to make that argument, but without actually having to explicitly say it. Yeah, without being, it's more of a a sneakier way of still trying to make the same point without being accused of hypocrisy. But some people aren't that clever. You would see, like, in the comment sections, people just outright saying feminism was a religion. It's the people who actually make the videos who are just a little bit shrewder. They understand how to do a grift a little bit better. Like TJ is an expert at grifting. It's the one sort of thing. It sounds like I'm giving him a compliment, which I'm not. But he is very good at grifting. He knows exactly how to con people, exactly how to spin people a yarn. It's an absolute talent he has. But there's some people who aren't that smart, and and those are the people who just give the game away. They're the people who will just call feminism a religion, and straight away they don't realise that what they've admitted to. But that was the other thing. I mean, there was a community called Atheism Plus, which was very short-lived, and it was just, as I understand it, like a website and a community of bloggers, and all it basically was, hey, we're atheists, but we're also feminists, and we're also various other progressive things, and that was what the plus bit was. But it still gets brought up to this day. There are still people who go on about Atheism Plus, even though the people who came up with that idea abandoned it pretty quickly after they realized it just wasn't really working. And that was people like PZ Myers and people from the the free thought blogs. Yeah, they also, yeah, the other big issue with them was they employed Thunderfoot to write for them, and very promptly fired him after they realized he's a shit writer. Because most of what he was writing on their blog site was just him trying to troll various other people on the blog site. And Thunderfoot really types as well like a teenager. He types like, he sometimes goes into all caps and starts ranting. And this isn't really like how a professional writer writes, Phil. You know, so basically, yeah, for posting a lot of anti-feminist stuff, they kicked him off, and a lot of his fans were saying, "Oh, well, your site's called Free Thought Blogs, but you've kicked Thunderfoot off," because they don't know what free thought means. They think free thought means free speech, which it actually doesn't. But even if it did, it's not really a free speech thing either. It's someone else's website. Like, they can decide what goes on it and what doesn't. It's not like it's not a publicly owned site or anything like that. And yeah.
Can I just quickly interrupt to say hello to Diamanda Hagen, who just turned up in the chat? Hello, welcome. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I was going to say, Andy, that when I first sort of made my channel and started making videos and stuff, the Armored Skeptic video that I responded to, he went on a lot about Atheism Plus in that. And that was already like quite long gone by the time I started. So I was like,
yeah.
What is this? What are you talking about? Why should I care about this? Why is this some massive blight on feminism? A thing I've never heard of before. And like, you know, I came in like fairly well versed. Like YouTube wasn't the first place that I did, like, I started being involved with the, gender culture war. I started out on Reddit. I was a mod.
Yeah.
I was a mod on r/feminism, which was like, an even more like intense, like over the top, ridiculous battleground for this than YouTube was. Like we were, like we were 50,000 people, and then on Reddit there was also the men's rights subreddit and the red pill subreddit, and they were combined about 300,000 people. I imagine there was quite a lot of crossover there, but still, it was a lot more people than us, and they would just send people to our threads and stuff every single day to just like cram it full of like the same like MRM talking points and stuff, and it just got so tiring. I got burned out after about 2 or 3 months and had to leave. But like, you know,
so they win.
Exactly right.
They must be right, defeated with facts and logic. Yeah. If you can't respond to all 7,000 of my subscribers, then you clearly have been defeated by facts and logic.
I'm trying to turn my volume up. I hope it works. I hope it's working. Yeah, and so like I came into YouTube and I was like, you know, I was expecting, all right, I had my sources, I had my academic stuff all set up, and then people started going on about this thing I'd never heard of before, Atheism Plus, and I was expected to rebut their claims about this thing. I didn't know what the hell it was. Like, why should it matter? It's already gone. It seems to have been gone for a while. Like, it was bizarre.
They were honestly just butthurt about it. Like it, I believe that Armored Skeptic had gone afoul of PZ Myers, and he was just upset about that. They were holding a grudge, and to him, the whole fault was on feminism. You know, it was clear. Not only was Atheism Plus didn't work, and the problem was definitely feminism, and and if ever anybody tried to have a feminist version rather than just strict atheism, clearly that was definitely going to happen again. And like all these assumptions were built into it, and a lot of it was emotional. It was just this knee-jerk, you know, my feelings had been hurt back then. Therefore, you know, and a lot of it was also that he could not, because I've seen some of this stuff, you know, when you start talking about just asking questions, you know, it's the typical sea lion trick.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing with Atheism Plus. Basically, it was just a community of atheists who wanted to create their own kind of niche of atheism, and that was the name they came up with. For they are not the first people to try and do that. Thunderfoot has tried this in the past. He came up with something called Pearlism, and Pearl stands for physical evidence and reasoned logic, which I've got to love this sort of way atheists love words like reason and logic and all this sort of stuff, and they love blathering on about it. But yeah, that's what he wanted to call his new movement. And I remember TJ wanted to start something called Amazing Atheism at one point, which was basically just atheists who are like him. Which is like, yeah, you don't need a name for that. There's nothing amazing about that.
Remember Brights?
The Brights. Oh, yes.
Brights.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, I remember Richard Dawkins lamented once. He says, we couldn't keep that name because apparently too many people thought it was arrogant. And I'm like, yeah, they were right, Richard. They were totally right. Yeah, just spend some time on the internet and you'll realize that anyone who calls himself a bright, it's like, no, it's like going around calling yourself a genius or an intellectual. It's like no one self-identifies as anything like that. But there's been plenty of people who've tried to create their own niche. Some of these things have worked. Secular humanism is one, and that has worked because it's something that kind of, for whatever reason, it's a name that was, I think, dreamt up by some fairly smart people, some fairly educated people with a kind of a fairly good idea of what they wanted to do. It's been very well formalized, and for whatever reason, basically, secular humanism is a kind of niche of being an atheism that's kind of caught on. It's lasted the test of time, and it is something that the people have identified with for a while. And yeah, it's been, I think, well over 100 years. It's difficult to say when anything starts, but I think at least 100 years we've had people using the term humanist to refer to someone who is non-religious but still has a kind of a sense of morality and still has a sense of, they're not just someone who lacks a belief in God, but they're someone who possesses a belief in things like reason, morality, empathy, science. And that to me is a good enough word for.
If I can interject, it's weird because we did not discuss this before, but this is what my upcoming video, which I'm still debating whether I should just put it out live or go back and rework it a little bit. Because you know how sometimes videos just aren't perfect and just won't be perfect.
Yeah.
But anyway. But it's about, I don't know if you guys know of the recent kerfuffle with Richard Dawkins and the American Humanist Association.
Yeah, is it to do with his ableism about?
It was to do with actually some transphobic tweets that he had recently put out.
Oh, yes, that was it, yeah. Yes, I did, and I think they removed him, didn't they? As
yes, yeah. They revoked his award from back in '96. I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with it, but it's one of the things that I talk about is the history of humanism, because it really seems like a lot of the people that were arguing that this was just the worst thing ever and cancel culture and all this just had no concept of what the hell they were talking about when they were talking about secular humanism.
Yeah.
And it is never, they're like, well, he wasn't asking questions, but they I could read off the tweets if you want. I have them somewhere, but originally, he came out several weeks ago, and he was talking about, I believe, Deborah So's garbage transphobic book, and just saying, well, if even half of this is true, then we have to do something, must be done. And, it's like, well, maybe you could check and see if half of it was true, then, dick.
My first thought upon hearing that idea is that, mate, if they're putting out a book where it's 50% untrue, like, that's a red flag. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Should we focus on the fact that half of it's bullshit? Like.
Yeah. That means whoever, that means it probably hasn't been peer reviewed by it. Probably Vanity published, or it's this. Yeah, like no. If this is, things like this are typically not the sort of thing that are accepted as academic books. It's like, no one peer reviewing anything looks at it and goes, well, half of it's right. Go on. Let's publish that.
It's good enough.
Yeah. I mean, I don't agree with them about everything, but that's one of my phrases I hate the most.
Oh, I do too. Oh my God.
Oh God.
It's like, literally, there's nobody I agree with about everything, but some disagreements are a little more important than others.
Yeah. Well, that was what I think some random geek told me. He said that his brother is a gamer-gator and a Trump supporter and everything. And when Trump came out in opposition to video, Trump actually said he was going to ban violent video games because he thought they were causing violence in society. And I think some random geek told me he asked his brother about this. Well, how do you feel about this? And he just said, "Oh, I don't agree with him about everything." And when someone says that, I think, well, why could you not just not agree with Anita Sarkeesian about everything? Why couldn't you just do that? Why did you have to have a massive harassment campaign against her that included things like bomb threats? And like, why couldn't you just say, well, she's don't agree with her about everything. She doesn't like some things about video games, but hey, let's just show. She's never even tried to ban video games either. Yeah. criticize them. And before anyone said, I don't even care if they're good criticisms or not. People go on about this, like whether they're good. I don't give a fuck. Nothing at all could ever justify the kind of harassment that she has endured for this. Whereas Trump actually was proposing to ban certain video games. In no uncertain terms, he was saying that. So how can you possibly just not agree with him about everything on that? Whereas Anita Sarkeesian, something has to be done about that, and it has to be a massive harassment campaign, and it's just so it's so glib, isn't it? This phrase, I don't agree about everything. There you go. I said it. I said I don't agree with him about everything, so you can't say I'm bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did it. I bet he's quaking in his boots now. Now he knows I don't agree with him about everything. He's probably really gonna take that to heart and think about that. Yeah.
So
that'll show him.
So we've got Rebecca Watson and we've got Anita Sarkeesian and Gamergate. And then I guess so the lines are drawn in the YouTube atheist community with, it seems like most people siding with the people who hate women faction. And Steve Shives and you and a handful of others tried to take a stand. And I think Steve Shives in particular, because he was the biggest channel to take that stand, kind of took a financial hit because of that. And his ability to be a professional YouTuber on the level of the Thunderfoots and Amazing Atheists was kind of devastated by that, at least for years, so that I really grew to quickly admire Steve for that, and the fact that he was willing to take that hit to his income in order to do what was right. And so that's why my first sort of big video was defending Steve Shives, but then I was well, I don't want to come across like a sort of a sectarian biased person, so I did a response to Steve about something he said that I didn't agree with, and he took that really, really well, so I respected him even more. And that was Christy Winters interviewed me about the Steve Shives video, the Armored Skeptic video, and so that was when I felt to be part of a community. And I kind of I fanboyed when we had our first hangout, Andy.
Oh god!
Because I had watched so many of your videos by that point. I don't there was a few things concepts you introduced me to that I didn't know about before, and then. So, Chrissy, can you talk about starting your channel and what drove you to do that, how you got involved?
Yeah. Well, it was during a period where I was underemployed, and I was going, and I was just sort of looking around, and it was something I was interested in doing. And do not laugh at me, but I was going to make a Minecraft videos, but where to sort of use that platform to talk about things like books or art or things that are interested in me. And so I just sort of got on YouTube and was clicking around and looking what was going on and said, holy crap, what is going on around here? It's this reactionary wasteland, because at the time it was, you'd have what they were called often the bedroom feminists. There would be some 16-year-old girl would get on her bed and she would say, I like feminism because I may be a woman or a girl, but I still feel like I can do what guys do. And then she'd get 10 people making these horrific responses to her and just piling on hundreds and hundreds of the worst, most vicious comments and replies would be coming at this person. So they would end up shutting down their channel. And, this was going on all the time and towards kids, and just some of the most repugnant stuff. So I said, well, I'm an old bitch. You can't push me around. I'll go on. You can dogpile me all day and watch me care. you know, that's sort of how I came to be on it. And I got to know a lot of people. Like you said, I still hang out now and then with Kevin Logan, Christy Winters. Got to know you, Garrett, and there were some other people around. And yeah, I mean, it was, for a time, there was a real community. It a lot of different things happened, but
yeah. So because I was going to say, I think the initial thing that united all of us was our opposition to the reactionaries, our opposition to like the rampant anti-feminism on YouTube, how like big these channels got, Thunderfoot, and like the amount of attention and subscribers they got because of being against like like you say, the like random 300 subscriber like YouTube feminists who like were making video vlogs from their bedrooms and stuff, like, and like that and being opposed to Gamergate, I think, was a major part of it as well, that in terms of them quickly getting a lot of subscribers. Not opposed to Gamergate, but you know what I mean, being part of that, especially like Sargon and Thunderfoot, those two in particular.
yes.
Yeah, and so I think like there were a lot of political divisions within the community, the YouTube sort of feminist social justice community, but they didn't become apparent. Well, they were apparent, but they didn't become an issue until a bit later. I think it kind of started with Trump, with the election, because I think some of us started going further left after that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first came on, because it was so typical for people to automatically say, all feminists are Marxists. Feminists are just all Marxists. So I was kind of quiet about the anarchist part, or the socialist part. I'm not a Marxist, but that's a distinction without a difference to many people.
Yeah, let's just say there's not a lot of people on the right who like will be, oh well, there's the Robert Owen type of socialism, let's not lump everyone in. No, that's
as far as they're concerned, it's all Marxism,
Cultural Marxism.
And let me tell you, not all feminists are socialist or leftists or Marxists or whatever you want to call that. A good number of feminists are very liberal, capitalist friendly people. And, I might think that that's a mistake on their part, but they don't think that. So it is what it is.
I think a lot of the more marginalized members of the community were the ones that kind of made the core up of the more far left sort of wing, that like trans people, non-binary people, the mentally ill people who had been homeless in the past, that kind of thing. People who like had a more direct experience of like the ways that the system harms people and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of what happened with, say, YouTube feminism is kind of the same as what happened with YouTube atheism. It started off feeling like quite a united thing until certain things come up, and with YouTube atheism, it was when feminism came up and things like that. With YouTube feminism, what happened was when things like it's the division between the anarchist feminists and the liberal feminists and the white feminists, the girl boss feminists, all these are a thing that when we're all just doing responses to MRAs and laughing at MRAs and things like that, it's all very easy to feel like we're a community. In the same way with when atheists were just pounding creationists all the time, it's very easy to feel like we're a community. When you start getting into the substance of things, that's when you start noticing there's a lot of significant differences which you can't really ignore. That's what event. I think certainly that's what's happened in the last few years. We've definitely started to see that sort of division happening.
Yeah, I think it starts out as who do we oppose, and then it sort of becomes what do we support, and like in the what do we support part, there was no agreement there between like different factions. at all.
Yeah.
And like the Richard Spencer punch was I think the first time where it became super obvious that there were some deep divisions in this thing.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, I think what part of the problem is, I mean, it's very easy to make fun of like whoever it is, like MRAs or people like that, because what they believe is the same with creationists. What they believe is so absurd and so obviously emotionally driven and so lacking in any kind of academic evidence or anything like that, that it's very easy to do that. And I think this sort of making fun of that of those sorts of people aspect of being whatever it is, be it an atheist or a feminist or whatever, is quite easy. It's when you get to the substance of it that's when you start showing true colours. There's someone I blocked recently on social media because I'd had enough, but she was someone who was very into the kind of making fun of straight white guys aspect of feminism, but when it came down to it, she was a rape apologist for Joe Biden. She was also a Zionist, which is why but yeah, when it comes to the actual substance of this, you can't do it. You can make fun of white guys all the time because that's easy, but when it comes down to actually dismantling these kind of hierarchies, not only will you not do it, you'll actually go the opposite way. When it's Joe Biden, you'll actually reinforce that hierarchy in alarmingly extreme ways. You'll actually not just defend him, you'll defend him as a rapist. I just can't. I think, wow. That actually matters as well. Like, you can make fun of MRAs and people like that in cells and whatever as much as you want. None of that actually really means anything. That's not activism as such. I suppose it maybe shows these people that they are going to be opposed. That there are people out there who are opposed. It has maybe some value, but not a fraction of the value as actually supporting rape victims or supporting anyone who's suffered as a result of misogyny or any kind of societal prejudice. That really, really matters. And that's what that's what I see as the crunch. When it comes to the crunch, that's what you've got to do. And sadly, no.
I noticed, Chrissy, in your, I don't know if I could say early videos, because I think you've unlisted or privated a lot of that stuff, by the way. Yeah. But from what's there at the moment in terms of early stuff, there's like a focus on the more like extreme reactionaries from the anti-feminist side, like Bane. You remember him?
I do.
Yeah.
and Bering.
Yes.
Is he still around? Is Bering still around?
Yeah.
He is, but he's a little different now, I think he does more. He doesn't really do the sort of go after, or maybe he does, and I've lost all track of him. But he seemed to be going after more like talking about the news or something in his own reactionary way.
So yeah, one of the things that research I did for this hang, I didn't do much, but one of the things I thought would be interesting is to take a look at all the like thought leaders of the anti-feminist, anti-social justice people and what their channels are doing now. Because one of the things I wanted to mention just before is that the other reason I think that the feminist social justice community kind of died is that we kind of won the conflict. And a lot of those people, like a lot of the people we were fighting just kind of stopped doing what they were doing. Sargon lost his bid to become a mainstream political figure, and Thunderfoot.
Wonderful.
But it was all part of his plan.
It was.
He actually said that, and he said that went exactly as expected. Like, great, yeah. You're playing 5-dimensional chess here, aren't you?
My entire plan was to wander around the UK getting blasted with milkshakes everywhere.
Yeah.
I just love free milkshakes. That's what I need. That was the whole plan.
Yeah, so when Sargon tried to become mainstream, people started, people outside the community found videos we'd made about Sargon, and they helped to, marginalize Sargon, so, I was pleased to be part of that. And the other one was Milo Yiannopoulos. Like
Yep.
Milo Yiannopoulos basically got booted out of polite society because of videos made
Yeah.
by well, there was
Oh, yeah.
a video by Eric Blair, Social Justice Warrior 101, SJW 101, and Kevin Logan did another one. And like people on the right found those. People on the right who didn't like Milo for being gay, I think, found those and used that
Yeah.
as a way to boot him out of the right, which, you know, it's a bad reason to want to do it, but he was an absolute piece of shit person. So you know, ultimately it was a good thing. But yeah, like so, like we started to get victories, and I think the thing that was driving the community kind of stopped being as important because it became obvious these people's bids to join mainstream society was not going to work.
Yeah. Well, that's what people like Carl don't get is that when you go try and become a mainstream politician, you realize how many people don't know who you are. Because the trouble is, you get loads of subscribers on YouTube like him. You feel like you're famous, but you have to remember, you're only famous within this particular area. Like when he goes into mainstream society and starts going on the actual television, people will see these things he's been saying and straight away see them for what they are. Like him doing all this Nazi apologism and this paedophilia apologism and all this, and they will just see that for what it is, and they'll be like, "Oh my goodness, is this really a thing that's been going on?" It's with his subscribers, the difference is there's the sunken cost fallacy and boiling frog syndrome, if you know what I mean. Like these are people who will have subscribed because they maybe liked one of his takes about feminism or something, maybe they're your average white dude who just thinks feminism is this scary political correctness thing. But gradually, as you know, more and more he gets more extreme. But because they've kind of already invested in him as someone they're going to treat as a thought leader, they just sort of make excuses for him. They think, oh, well, he's probably just being edgy, probably just doing this. And he gets more and more extreme over the years. And the term is boiling frog syndrome. You don't realize how much something's changing. And that's how propaganda works. But the trouble is, like, there's loads of people who've never heard don't have any kind of investment in Carl like that at all. So when he's on the mainstream news in the UK, to all the people out there who don't spend all their time sitting on YouTube watching videos, they see these clips and they just take it for what it is. I'm talking about, you know, ordinary Middle Englanders here. I'm not talking about lefty progressive SJW type. Ordinary people who would be his target audience are people who see this and go, oh, fucking hell, no, not a chance in hell am I voting for him. And if you're Nigel Farage, you actually start a new political party just so you can't be associated to Carl. Yeah. That happened. That's where the Brexit Party came about. He started a new party, which is basically the same as UKIP, because that's what UKIP just means. UK independence. That's Europe is what they wanted independence from. So it just means the same thing. So Carl is so bad. Nigel Farage thought he was too extreme.
It was
started a new party.
It was Carl and what's the name of that other doofus? The Nazi salute guy. The dog.
Count Dankula.
Yeah, Count. They were like, yeah, we tried to do a soft coup in UKIP, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, you coup them all right. Right out of existence.
Yeah.
Carl destroys a political party by joining it. I love it.
Yeah. That's amazing. And it was too extreme for Nigel Farage. Fucking hell.
I'll say another thing that I think happens is I do think that there are these extremes out there. And one thing that YouTube did was give people who never had their own, they didn't have a show to watch. If you were an extreme anti-feminist, if you're, a pickup artist who really loves that rape culture, man, really, really loves the rape culture, or if you're just a horrible person whose idea of a good time is to harass a 16-year-old girl and call her, the C word or whatever, then it wasn't like you had a lot of entertainment options that really cater to that out there. But then YouTube comes along and gives you something you've never had before. And so, yeah, he has hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but that's still tiny, you know, in the greater uh, wider whatever of things. That's just a teensy proportion. And it's from all over. It's from several different countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not just the
Yeah,
Anglosphere. A lot of like people who spoke English as a second language and hated women that flocked to those channels as well. Like it's the whole world that were making up their sub counts, I think. And like I wanted to say that I think like Thunderfoot and Sargon and Amazing Atheist and stuff, they all have these big sub counts still. But if you actually go to their, I can't do it on my computer because it'll change the window. But if you go to their channels and see their average views per video these days, it's like 20,000 on Amazing Atheist, 20,000 per video. Thunderfoot has a bit more, but Thunderfoot isn't talking about feminists much anymore. Thunderfoot has a series called Busted where he goes into pseudoscience and fake news and stuff. So he's kind of changed his niche.
Yeah, is he probably going to trying to go back to the whole skeptic?
Yeah,
thing?
well, I think what happened is his own subscribers got so sick of him talking about Anita Sarkeesian that they just basically protested to the degree that he had to stop. He just sort of had to.
Yeah. Well, he lost a load of those edgelord subscribers, didn't he? Because he said it wasn't okay for Sargon to make fun of someone who's just died. That was
yes,
what happened.
That was a start. That was after after Heather died.
Yeah.
And
the thing with that is like Thunderfoot objected to that because he can relate to it. Because apparently when Thunderfoot's dad died, some people made fun of him or made inappropriate jokes about it. And because he related to that, he was like, "Oh no, you shouldn't go there." But the thing is, like, Thunderfoot will always, when he can relate to it, it's suddenly he recognizes it as a problem. When it's something he can't relate to, he's like, "Oh yeah, just toughen up and deal with it, everybody. Stop being so easily offended." Blah 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 blah. And and I don't feel really sorry for Thunderfoot about losing all them subs because it's just chickens coming home to roost, basically, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
that's all it is.
And then he was against Brexit because he works outside of.
He has a real job.
Yeah, he has a real job.
he's not a professional shitlord. This is the thing. Yeah, he works in science. He will, being part of Europe will and he works in Europe. His visa, he will have a work visa in Europe and whatnot. And
yeah, well, that's the thing is that Britain is lagging behind in mainland Europe in terms of the sciences. So if you're a like serious scientist, especially a physicist, you kind of like are gonna end up going to CERN and like not living in your own country. So yeah, it's a serious threat.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like with Thunderfoot, like he actually does have a PhD, and he does have a real job. It's the people who came after him who don't. I mean, Sargon is someone who dropped out of college to. Well, uni as we call it here, to do IT. And I'm just going to say that I totally understand why some people do drop out of university. I understand there's a lot of issues with, class and so on here. Not everyone can afford to stay in university. Some people have, there are a lot of reasons that, I don't think that everyone who dropped out of university is some kind of loser or anything like that, just to be clear. But I think there's a strong element doing the work here, or this requires something. Instead of actually got to provide source here, and getting a job is perhaps the easier option. And you think, and the thing is, that's fine in a lot of ways. Academia isn't for everybody, but when you start a YouTube channel where you're telling people who know what they're talking about, who did actually work through university, not just to the undergrad level, but to things like postgrad and to PhD. If you're just going to sit there and tell them that they're wrong about everything because they disagree with your personal prejudices, I think that the arrogance of that is appalling, and I do feel justified in pointing out, look, you're a dropout, you're a uni dropout, and there may have been good reasons for that, but regardless, you are not at all qualified to start telling a bunch of people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Professor Philip Moriarty on this one, mate. Like, yeah.
But the thing with Thunderfoot is that he does have a PhD, but his PhD is in chemistry. And there are some people I remember back in the day saying he was a shitty chemist. I don't know. I'm not at all knowledgeable enough to be able to say that. Some of these people were like part of the sort of feminist community. I don't know if they were just angry with him and slinging him off or whatever.
So I brought up Moriarty because he had a conflict with Thunderfoot over some stuff that was outside of Thunderfoot's specialization. Like Thunderfoot was not qualified to be making these takes, and Moriarty was like, "This is garbage what you're saying right now." Like it's and like the other thing about bringing up Moriarty is one of the things I wanted to do in this hangout is kind of like salute some of the fallen channels along the way. Moriarty had to take his channel down because he started getting like death threats sent to his family and stuff. The university he worked for basically made him take his channel down because it was causing death threats to get sent to the university and stuff. And then Natalie Alford took her channel down because of death threats. And there was a lot of channels along the way that died, and I felt so sad about every one of them. And then of course I became one of them. So
there's a number of people who I sort of wish were still making videos, but I understand I wouldn't pressure them to ever start again. Some of them they obviously had reasons for stopping. What I'm more concerned about is those reasons, the fact that some of them were receiving death threats and things like this, and of course, I mean, this is the same, the same community of people that, when when people start contacting Thunderfoot's employer, letting them know the sort of stuff he's doing. Often, I mean, I think, they all say, "Oh, you're trying to get him fired. How awful." I think, well, okay, well, people aren't. I mean, I don't entirely know where I stand on that. I would not contact Thunderfoot's workplace because of what he posts on YouTube. I would perhaps mention it in a video that I think it's a shame that this institution employs people like this. But I wouldn't actively try and say, "Hey, could you please fire this person because I think they're a disgusting person."
I think there's a line between someone like Thunderfoot and someone like Black Pigeon Speaks. If I found out where Black Pigeon Speaks worked, they would be getting contacted. Could Black Pigeon Speaks? Pigeon Speaks is a Nazi, like a straight up Nazi, and and I think the other thing that's interesting about the old community is that people on our side who it became obvious they were bigots in some way or another, or they started doing something horrible. They got forced out. Laughing Witch got forced out for spearheading that Thunderfoot employer thing. Jenny McDermott got forced out for being like a second waver, turf, swerf. Particularly her swerfism that led to her having a conflict with me.
It was the turfism with me. I want to answer Amanda Hagen's question. To tell you that Aslan Rollins has come out as non-binary.
Correct.
And they are now going to uni again. So
cool.
Yeah, they're back here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Specifically in Wellington, where I live.
So yes, Aslan is being. So
I mean, some of these people you've mentioned as well. I mean, I don't want to sort of dodge around the issue. I mean, a lot of these people I don't talk to. I did briefly was on good terms with Jenny McDermott for a very short period when I first discovered her channel. A lot of the stuff she says, I sometimes just think, are you being serious? Like, she just seems almost like trollish. I just think she just seems so determined to say the wrong thing and provoke some sort of reaction. But
it's actually a really good point, because it wasn't just her various prejudices against like her second wavy kind of shit. It was also the fact that she was a shitlord. That's like,
Yes.
and the shitlord part of the community was like, I hated them. I think that you're just derailing stuff. This is a serious issue we're talking about here. This is serious stuff that gets people killed in real life, like by like women hating bigots and anti-trans bigots and stuff. Like, we need to like. This is not a game, and it's not like a sport. We need to take this shit seriously. And I was trying to remember the name of Jenny McDermott had a friend who was much more of a shitlord than even more of a shitlord than Jenny was. I can't remember what that person. Bewildered Ape.
Bewildered Ape. Yes, that's who I was going to say. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He was. And just annoying. So he was another one of these people who seemed to be supposedly playing 5-dimensional chess. It was one of these people who's like presumably had some really clever plan that involved stirring up a lot of drama and something he would do as well as he would spread certain misinformation about anti-feminists, which of course anti-feminists would point out and would use this as evidence that feminists are all liars and stuff. He told, I can't remember what it was. He told me something about Thunderfoot that wasn't true. I believed it. I said it somewhere. Thunderfoot actually came in himself and said, "That's not true, by the way." And I just said, if it's not true, I'm genuinely sorry. I genuinely apologize for that. And I thought, in future, I'm not going to listen to Bewildered Ape. All that happened, though, by the way, when I said that was a load of Thunderfoot's fans bombarded me and said, "What do you mean, if it's not true? It's definitely not true." And I said, "Well, what I'm saying is I haven't got the time to go and check this. That's all I'm saying. I don't have the devout belief in Thunderfoot as being right about everything that I just accept it that you have. I'm sorry, but I have apologized because it is genuinely wrong to spread misinformation about people, even if they're Thunderfoot. So that's that. But yeah, the Bewildered Ape had this habit of doing things like that. And I just find stuff like that so counterproductive and pointless, and it just irritates me. It just generally irritates me. It's like I just used to think, just fuck off. What are you even doing here? What is the point of all this?
Yeah, like, on the one hand, I do kind of understand the mentality because, like, being in the trenches of the gender culture war it gives you a sort of militant mentality that does kind of make it like a fight, but like fights are serious and they're not games, and I think some people just like ended up going more from fight to game. Yeah. And like it didn't necessarily directly affect them in any way, so that it's fine to, like treat it like that.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that happened, and I don't think you folks were around then, but there was quite a serious incident where someone in the YouTube feminist community, to put it this way, there were two people in the YouTube feminist community who'd been having a kind of online long-distance relationship. And one of them was non-binary, but was not out yet. So they were still a woman from everyone's perspective. That's how that's how they were identifying. And that's how we all understood them to be. And the other was a cis guy. And what happened there was when this relationship went awry, this cis guy turned really nasty. And I heard something about this. The person in question, the non-binary person, contacted me and just said, "Look, if you do any more like hangouts with Chris, could you just not invite me, please? Because he and I are not on speaking terms at the moment. We've had quite a bad fallout." And I said, "Well, okay, yeah." That's all this person told me to do. And I think that's all they really told anyone else. They just said, "Look, that's what's going on." And next thing you know, like the guy I'm talking about is Sequester Zone, by the way. I don't know why I'm acting like this is information I don't want people to know. He's not in witness protection.
Yeah.
No, he's not around anymore. And even if he were, I don't care. He's not in the witness protection program. So I don't know why I'm being so vague. I'm being like, yes, this individual. No, yeah, but he just puts this video up, totally going after his now ex online partner because of this, and totally laying in. But Jenny McDermott and Bewildered Ape both took his side in this whole thing. And I think this is very bad that you, as supposed feminists, are taking the side taking the side of cis male abuser in this conflict. I mean, the thing he kept saying was, "Oh, she's been doing this whisper campaign against me. She's been saying stuff behind my back." And I was thinking, like, all they have been saying, you know, that's how they identify now, have been saying behind your back is, "Please don't invite me to any more hangouts that involve you." That's it. They haven't pressured me to take any kind of side in this. They haven't said you've got to take my side because he's a man and that's how feminism works. Because yes, feminism is always taking the side of the woman or the non-binary person. That's not what happened. It was just a case of, please don't involve me. I don't want to be anywhere near this person. I didn't plan to take any kind of side either. I wasn't going to do anything, contact him, or do anything about this until he puts this video up. When I was like, I said, you really should not have done that. This is a really shitty thing you've done, and this was a big drama for a while. It was a horrible drama, but yeah, the point is, Jenny McDermott and Bill Day both took the side of sequestered in that, and you know, it really was. To me, that was just so awful. But the way they took his side as well was really aggressive. Jenny McDermott basically told this person, she said, "I will make video after video exposing you." It's like, wow, you're not just falling for his bullshit. You're aggressively reinforcing it. You're participating in this. Yeah, I just thought, oh my goodness, that was pretty much the end of me giving a fuck about her, really. But that was one of the big dramas that happened, and that surprised me and upset me. I'd always thought Sequester Zone was quite a good YouTuber at one point. I really thought he was actually, as you know, as guys go at being a feminist. I always thought he was actually pretty good at it, but no, apparently not. And you know, I did genuinely feel a bit upset about that. You know, it feels like felt like I'd lost my, lost my faith in someone a bit, really, there. So,
on the subject of non-binary people, I believe it was your video intro, "Ladies, NBs, and Gents," that was the first time I heard the term.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to say that my motivation for that was purely about being inclusive, and it mostly is, but it was also because there'd recently been a drama with, do you remember a channel called The Breakfast Club?
No, I don't.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very
Basically,
good.
Do you remember the video I'm talking about, Chrissy? Do you remember?
I think so. So
yeah, there was a bit of talk. Basically, there was a youngish YouTuber who I don't think does videos anymore, but she put up, to be fair, a fairly innocent video where she talked about how at her school someone had complained about one of the teachers using the phrase "ladies and gentlemen" because it leaves out non-binary people, and she was saying, like, is this really a big issue? You know, should we? And to be fair, she was genuinely asking. She wasn't like concerned trolling as such. She was just genuinely a bit unsure, like, is this really a big issue for non-binary people? And someone else, Peach from the Breakfast Club, put up this video saying, oh, she outright came out as like, oh god, there's so much more important things we could be worrying about than whether you use a phrase that includes non-binary people. And she actually said, oh, it's off-putting to allies, this sort of thing. And I was thinking, oh, really? But I did a response to that where I just said, I thought I was fairly, moderate in my response. I said, well, maybe it is for some people. For some people, maybe from their perspective, it is important, and it's not difficult to correct. There are other phrases we can use. We could be more inclusive. And I thought my response was fairly vanilla. I didn't start being aggressive or anything, but the response I got back from Peach and DevShell, who was, I don't know, still is their partner at the time, was really aggressive. It's like they're these higher level YouTube atheists, and they're really pissed off that some nobody is daring to question them, and they got really quite unpleasant with me about it. And so, for me, using the phrase, opening every single fucking video I do with the phrase "ladies, ladies and gentlemen" is in part like my eternal middle finger to them. It's like I want every video to be like a middle finger to them, but it is obviously more about including non-binary people. But there is that slight ulterior motive to say fuck you to that channel. But,
and of course, on that same subject, if we skip forward in the timeline a little bit, that is one of the other things that caused a lot of division in the community with VidCon.
Yeah.
We knew VidCon was going to come up at some point in this discussion. VidCon 2017, with the famous photo of Harry and Natalie and Dan.
God.
Yeah, hanging out with Shoe on Head and Ahmed Skeptic and having a laugh.
God.
Yeah.
Because we don't agree about everything. But...
Yeah, and I was just like, I was involved with an ongoing dispute with Shoe on Head about non-binary people and this horrible fucking video she made called There Are Only Two Genders, where it was just completely pseudoscience, like not supported by real facts at all. And I messaged her about it saying, this is the actual science of it. You're wrong. Can you take the video down and ideally put a new video up saying you were wrong? And she was like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And just never did it. And then Harry's like, oh, I'm going to hang out with Shoe on Head at VidCon. I was like, can you not? Because that's kind of like throwing our non-binary friends in the community under the bus in a big way. And he was like, oh, no, I'll get her to change her mind on that. And he didn't. And
like having brunch with her.
Yeah, exactly. Having a super friendly brunch, that'll do it.
Oh, God.
And
it was very optimistic of you, by the way, to think Shoe on Head would.
Well, yeah,
it was with facts.
No, the reason was because we'd already had a previous dispute about stuff to do with rape culture, where she did admit she was wrong. Where like I did a hangout with her and Ahmed Skeptic with Tim about the fact that because I think they had gotten confused about the 1 in 5 statistic. They thought the 1 in 5 statistic was about rape prevalence, but it's actually about sexual assault prevalence in general. And I was like, the actual stats for that are lower, and nobody's saying they're as high as you were saying they are, as you were saying we are saying they are. And they were like, oh, okay, we were wrong. Our bad. So I was like, these people seem at least somewhat reasonable. I, of course, now realize that was incredibly stupid of me to think that. But yeah, it's like that. That's why I initially did try to reach out to her.
Yeah.
But that whole thing just came off to me as them like sucking up to bigger YouTubers to try and get bigger. And I'm like,
it generally just suggests they don't take it seriously either. It just says it's like they treat this like a game, and off the pitch, it's all we're all mates. It's like no. I think someone left Steve Chives a comment on one of his You Had to Ask videos about this, and I think the phrase they used was, "Are they now off the bowling team for doing this, for taking this photo?" And my thought were, well, it's not a fucking bowling team. This is serious. This is not a little social club. We do get on. A lot of us are friends, but that first and foremost, this is activism. And it's,
and that's exactly what I said during the VidCon scandal. It's like, look, I'm not in this to be buddies with people. I'm not in this to. It's not a social club to me. It's serious. It's important activism that I believe we were doing. And like to treat it like it's just a social club where we hang out together because we agree on some stuff is just wrong-headed, and it hurts people to have that attitude.
It's hard because it's a lot has happened even since then that I think colors my perspective on it now, because a lot of people have attempted to rehabilitate Shoe on Head for whatever reason.
People kept doing that after VidCon.
And I think to a degree, I mean, someone like Sargon, someone like a lot of these other people, they are never getting out of whatever this shitlord thing that they're doing because they can't. They have painted themselves into a corner. That they can't, like, what are they going to do? Oh, I'm going to go apply for a regular job. Oh, I see here. You're the person who was infamous for, saying that you wouldn't even rape one of our, elected leaders.
Jess Phillips.
Yeah. So maybe I won't hire you. So like that is, that is one of the real problems that happens if you decide you're going to be an uber reactionary. Like, what are you going to do when people stop paying you for that?
Yeah,
Nothing.
well, also, like, you know, they tied their, because they were monetized channels, they tied their income to their political, I don't even know if I'd use the term political beliefs, because actually how much they truly held this stuff is we'll never know. But, like, they tied their income to saying certain things, political, to espousing certain political views. And, like, if you get to the point where you no longer believe in that, you have to keep saying it because your money relies on that. And there's a really interesting Blair White video that came out. I don't know if you ever saw that, where Blair White at one point was like, all these people in the anti-social justice community, they're all just con artists. They don't believe the shit they're saying. They make fun of their followers for being such militantly right-wing, like, you know, clowns. They don't actually fucking buy into half of the shit. And then 2 days later put up another video saying, oh, no, I'm like backpedaling like massively on it. I think Blair White realized that their own income would be negatively affected by making that kind of video. So
I didn't know that had happened.
Yeah. It's like the mask slipped really hard there. And I was like, yeah, you know, I was fucking right. Because I always got the vibe that a lot of these people, especially like Amazing Atheist in particular, didn't really believe a lot of the stuff they said.
Yeah. Well, with some of these people, I think with Carl, I think it's instinctive. Like the position he takes on anything is what will annoy people like ourselves the most. That's basically what he does. Some of this stuff, I think, I can't believe that you actually care about this, Carl. I don't think you even knew this issue or whatever it is existed until some drama happened. I think it's just that you instinctively have to take the side that will upset people like ourselves the most, because that's just the kind of, you know, second nature to you now. You just do it. I don't think you even think about it. I don't think you even think about whether this, you know, maybe you could agree with us occasionally, Carl, but no, it's got to be, I've just got to take the most reactionary right-wing side because it's just what I do now. I don't even think about whether I actually agree with this. With TJ, it's he goes after. He's another one of these people, who just goes after the drama. He's a bit more conscious of this, though. I think he kind of knows what he's doing because he's an actual, you know, experienced grifter. It's a case of I know wherever the drama goes, I will go there. Whatever I can say that will provoke the most upset and the most
clickbait. It's clickbait.
Yeah, basically. I mean, TJ's channel, if you've ever watched any of his really old stuff, it's always been like that. Like when he was doing stuff about atheism, it was always about poning creationists. Not so much in the way Thunderfoot does, where he tries to come at it from a scientific angle, but more just from the general, general new atheist angle. But yeah, he would just start beef with anyone. TJ would. It was just that was his whole thing. And but when he told people to vote for Trump as well, I just couldn't really believe that he believed that. I was like, you just sort of don't quite sound like you mean it. I mean, you're still a complete asshole for saying it. Okay, you're as much of an asshole as someone who does mean it, because you've actually told people to vote for Trump. So you are going to be treated the same, but the fact is, I just can't believe in it. I think you are desperately trying to... You're taking a gamble is the way to go if I want to keep this drama train going.
I think the arguments he made in that video about why people should vote for Trump did not sound genuinely held. They sounded like he was reaching for whatever, grasping at straws to try and figure out a way to argue for that, and he didn't really succeed.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I just thought, you just know this is the way the drama train is headed, and you're taking that gamble. You're thinking, do I risk alienating the people who subscribed to me in 2006 or whatever, who might still be around in favor of winning over the new kind of chud audience that...
I'm just gonna go to the bathroom real quick. I'll be back.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. No worries.
Okay, so I mean, the thing about Shu and people like the Amazing Atheist is they have been able to pivot a little bit, you know, and Shu was helped along by a lot of people, and she is, I mean, I was actually surprised about how, I guess I used to think she was smarter than I do now, which is weird. Like the more she went into leftism, sort of pseudo leftism,
Yeah.
because now she's for healthcare, or she is sort of socialist friendly, but not really. And she's like, she doesn't like Trump anymore. But at the same time, she just puts out some of the most reactionary takes, when it comes to social issues, when it comes to, these kind of other things, very Nazbol kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I don't follow her particularly, but I'm a member of LeftTube Posting, the Facebook group.
Oh yeah.
And it seems every other week someone is posting some really cringy thing about how excited they are that they think Shoe on Head might be moving further to the left, or might be becoming a leftist, which is a very vague term in itself, which I have a big problem with. And I'm like, why do we care about this? I don't care. Right? She's so what? Like, so you get Shoe on Head to identify as something fairly meaningless, like a leftist. So what? I don't see that as a particular victory for social progress or anything like that. To me, that is just. It's like they're so excited. It's like they think if they can win over someone who's got a bit of clout on YouTube,
that'll fix everything.
Yeah, it's like I just don't really care about. I'm much more concerned with making, if we're talking about building communities, I'm more concerned with making a community that's accommodating to people like, people of color or LGBTQ people, basically the sort of people that she has a history of upsetting and being bigoted towards. So as far as I'm concerned, and if she does actually undergo some massive change, then great. But I don't feel any pressure to try and accommodate that, or it's certainly not anywhere even close to the top of the list of my priorities as to what I'm personally trying to work towards. So when people say like, "Oh, I think Shoe might be becoming a leftist," it's like, I don't care. I mean, for a start, leftism isn't really a thing. It's like anarchism is a thing, Marxist-Leninism is a thing. Those are very different ideas that are both, seem to be covered by this vague term of leftism. I said the differences between those things matter a great deal. They aren't things that can be solved. They're not things that can be solved later. They're not differences that are. We're not just taking different paths up the same mountain. They're very different things. And
the kind of society that the two groups want to create are totally different to each other and not compatible.
Yeah. So when someone says, "Oh, I think Shoe might be becoming a leftist," it's like that's not even really a thing. For a start, the reason you're getting excited about that is because you've become so accustomed to the idea of left being on the left just means hating the right. And these people are still, it's like we were talking about before, like the whole thing about what do we oppose rather than what before. A lot of these people are still in that stage. They're in that stage of what do we oppose? We oppose right-wing stuff. So
part of the issue there is what I like to call generic leftism, where the people don't have answers. Because they don't really support anything. They can diagnose a social problem and point out an issue, but there's no part where they're like, and this is how we fix it. That always bothered me about the sort of leftist on YouTube.
Yeah, well, all they're doing it's like, if you imagine a sixth form common room, or in America, it might be like a high school lunchroom, might be the thing. And it's like, we want our corner of this room to be kind of the most populated, or we want to be able to expand it so that we're occupying more space in this area. And I think that's how these leftists view the internet. Like they view it as a case of, if there's more of us, we kind of win. We get to take up the most space in the common room, and we become the dominant clique. We're no longer a marginalized group of little clique sort of sitting in the corner of the common room. We're now actually getting the best seats and the best table. That's how they view it, and the way they see the way to do that is to be much broader in their idea of specifying, saying I'm an anarchist or I'm an anarcho-communist or something. That they can't do that. So by calling themselves leftists, they're able to buff their numbers up and be able to feel like, I'm in a big community here. I'm in a big community that's taken up a lot of space in this virtual common room or this virtual lunchroom, and therefore, I don't feel like some weird outcast anymore. It's like, okay, but that's all you're doing. You're taking up, you're part of a bigger. You're feeling like you're part of a bigger community. Very nice, but what in actual fact, what you're going to do? You have incompatible aims with a lot of the people here. That's assuming you even understand the aims. Some of these people literally are just leftists. They haven't even. It's not like they're anarchists and Marxist-Leninists who are putting aside their differences. They literally haven't even got to that stage yet. They've just, and that's as much as you could ever get shoe on head to be. And even then, I think she would be very tentative about it and would probably leave if she got bored.
I mean, it's about knowing it's about knowing the way that the wind is blowing and going along with it with many, or it might as well be, because it's not like they have some grasp on theory, and it's not like they do any kind of praxis whatsoever. So, like the last time they were involved in a group of people doing something together was never, it's never happened. It isn't going to happen. So they don't have a knowledge base either from theory or from experience to sort of work from. I think one of the other things, though, that has been a real big issue for me that I bring up a lot, and I think it's part of why VidCon ended up, why that picture was a problem, is we are far too interested in producing these kinds of micro celebrities of YouTube and supporting them. And it's like, we don't, guys, y'all.
From my perspective, what kind of happened to the YouTube social justice feminist community is that a few channels became really big and the rest died. And that, to me, that is so capitalism. That's, that's what happens. It gets commodified, and then the most popular things rise to the top, and everything else doesn't make they can't make a living, so they have to go and do something else, because trying to do YouTube and a full-time job at the same time is a nightmare. Well, I assume it is. I haven't actually been in that position, but I would assume it is. So I think. And I also wanted to just quickly reference something that Beefcat said in the chat about people who are more concerned with winning than the issues, like beating whatever they consider to be their enemy. And I think it reminded me a lot of this a drama among the sort of when the division between the liberals and the anarchists happened in the community, with a chap called Bad Mouse. Bad Mouse was an anarchist who decided to stop being an anarchist because he thought that being a Marxist-Leninist is better at defeating capitalism. And
God.
And I was like, being a Marxist-Leninist might defeat private property and stuff, but it just replaces it with something that's just as bad. And that obsession with winning against a perceived enemy can just at all costs can lead to you becoming the villain, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just think it only defeats capitalism in the sense that it puts things in the hands of the state. It's state capitalism, essentially. Yeah, it's all the same problem.
Rudolf Rocker called it bureaucratic state capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you look at Marxist-Leninist regimes throughout the world, none of them have ever withered away. This is still a promise we are waiting on to this day. But what I've always said this as well. Even if one of them withered away tomorrow, it would still not justify its existence up till that point. There is still so much oppression and suffering and death that regime has been responsible for up until that point, which I don't think you can just say is justified because the people now are going to be fine. That's not okay. We don't have the right to say that was a justified sacrifice. The people who've had to suffer for decades under this Marxist-Leninist regime, that was all justified because the people now are going to be fine. It's like, no, the people now are not more important than those people then. Those people then mattered as much, and they should not have had to go through that. So even if one of these things does wither away, I'm still not really convinced it's actually proven Marxist-Leninism to me on an ethical, moral level. I still no. So I just don't think that. Yeah, that Marxist-Leninism to me is so obviously just a failed idea. It's just so obviously a terrible idea that it's just really, really sad to me that there are people who will choose to either support it or to put aside their differences with people who support it in the glorious name of leftism.
And the other thing is that. Like, I don't necessarily think that Marxist-Leninists, at least the ones that I know of, cared particularly about the issues that the YouTube feminist social justice community formed around. They weren't there. The division was between anarchists and liberals. There was no Marxist-Leninist faction. When Badmouth became a Marxist-Leninist, he left the community. Like, that's what he had to leave it because you're not part of a group that's part of that, part of a faction of that community anymore. And so it kind of seemed like a selling out of that as well to me.
Yeah, well, a huge number of Marxist-Leninists are class reductionists as well. So feminism is going to be of no interest to them because there is no war but class war, and any sexism, if they admit it exists, can wait till later. Once this one of these states has spent over a fucking century withering away or whatever, then maybe we could sort out things like sexism. Like we could. God.
Sorry, go, Chris.
No, I was going to say, I will. Talk to, up to like your tanky types, in which case you're on your own. But I'll talk to these other groups because I always think I'm going to be able to convince people. So I understand, even if that's a naive thing. I think keeping the lines of communication open, but it ends up being. With class reductionism, I just can't even just go away. I just can't.
Yeah, and I think that is why the division was between anarchists and liberals, because while there is the sort of manarchist faction of dude bro brocialist types within anarchism, they are a tiny minority, and for the most part anarchists think that in order to be an anarchist you have to be a feminist, because patriarchy is a hierarchy. It's an unjustifiable coercive social hierarchy of the most obvious kind. It's like, just look at the statistics of like Congress and stuff. It's so obvious that it's there. And so you can't really be an anarchist apart from being a feminist. And while there is anarcho-feminism, that doesn't mean those are the only ones that agree with feminism. They're just the ones that have chosen to focus on patriarchy as the hierarchy they want to understand the best in order to overthrow it. And so I think that's kind of the whole idea of like generic leftism even coming into the equation at all as part of this like bread tube thing kind of like bums me out, because it's like, do you even really care about like social justice or like
some don't. I do think that BreadTube, one of the things that BreadTube has been, if we're just talking in general, because I know people who, everybody's going to say, well, what is BreadTube and who is BreadTube and blah, 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 blah. But just as a general movement, sort of, if you want to call it the post-feminist, post-social justice on YouTube, was sort of this BreadTube movement. It's been a mixed bag, to say the very least. And a lot of people, who hadn't necessarily been around, they came in and they said, well, look at what's, all this, this bro stuff, all this posturing, debate me stuff is what's popular. We should do that. We should do it as leftists. And it doesn't work. It's just not,
Yeah. We shouldn't be replicating the right-wing way of doing things. That's a huge mistake. So these leftists think that that somehow, like, if we replicate that, if we have our own debate bros and our own kind of thought leaders like this, somehow we can beat them at their own game. And it's like, no, partly because I'm a communications guy, that's what my master's is in. My concern is more, look, that shouldn't work. Like these sort of channels should not be convincing to people, but they are, because people haven't been taught to not be convinced by them. And that's more what I'm interested in doing, convince people to actually think for themselves. But when I say think for themselves, I mean that in the true sense. I don't mean think for yourselves and just subscribe to whatever bullshit channel you happen to find compelling. Like, so when you watch a channel by anyone, you should always feel comfortable being critical of it. But I do mean actually critical, not throwing mud at it, actually assessing it, thinking about it, taking it on board. You should never worry about criticizing a channel. Like whenever anyone criticizes ContraPoints or anything like that, there's a load of fans who rush in to say, because they're terrified. They're terrified that if this channel is in any way, the credibility of this channel is shaken in any way, that defeats that somehow shakes the whole foundations of leftism. Suddenly, like, leftism loses ground, or this channel might not be as convincing to people anymore. It might not be bringing people over anymore. And I think if the only reason people are coming over is because they find this channel entertaining or compelling or charismatic, they're not really coming over. They're just sort of joining the clique that is leftism. That's their new group of friends for the time being. That they're not actually engaging with like anarchist theory or anything like that, or feminist theory. They're just sort of coming over. This isn't really winning people over at all. We need to be convincing.
It is in such a shallow way that they can be unconvinced next month. You know, like but. But it's, I am not trying to, there are videos that ContraPoints has put out that I've really liked. There's videos that H Bomber guy, he just put out a video yesterday that I thought was pretty good. It really went into the whole, the vaccine issue with Wakefield and really did that dive into how that all came about in a way that was also entertaining. And I'm glad for that. I'm glad for these people and what they're doing. I just, several things. One is that they do seem to be very, very touchy about criticism. Not necessarily Harry, because I'm not aware of him, but like there are some people there.
Sorry, I was going to say, Chrissy, the reason you still like Harry is because you're not friendly with him. Because what I would say about Harry is, great YouTuber, but don't try and be his friend, because he's not a nice person. He's not a good person to be friends with at all. Horrible person to try and be a friend of, because, he said that one of the most hurtful things anyone's ever said to me in my life, Harry. Something that, like, anyone who is in my position would struggle to ever be able to get past. And
I'm off. I am sorry. I don't have personal relationships with these people, so it's
that's what I'm saying.
That's a good decision as well.
That is the I'm too personally invested in this, but that is the point I was trying to make, is that they're great YouTubers, they make great arguments, they influence people and all that. That's great, but as individuals, like, just maybe leave it to watching their videos is what I'd say.
Yeah. Well, this is another thing. These channels are all kind of self-promoters. They're very much promoting themselves as a brand, and there's kind of a problem with that, because you end up not being able to really separate the person from the.
It encourages that. What's that called? Where you parasocial relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Parasocial relationships. Yeah. It's to me. It's just okay. I mean, you shouldn't try and form parasocial relationships, as far as I'm concerned. I think that whenever sometimes it's unavoidable that you'll be promoting yourself as a brand. If you're something like a musician or someone, like a singer-songwriter, let's say you're Bob Dylan or something, it's very difficult to promote your music and your songs without promoting yourself, because it's kind of how that works. It's like you're giving us bits of your personality and your ideas in the form of songs. So it's very difficult to separate the art from the artist a little bit. It's kind of difficult. We sort of, we can't sort of appreciate the music of someone like Bob Dylan without somewhat appreciating him as a person. So if you go to see him live, you will be seeing him. We can't sort of say, well, look, he's got to stand behind a curtain or something. So we're not actually at any point forming a parasocial relationship. We are distinctly being as cold and unfriendly to him as we possibly can. It's like if we meet him after a gig or something, we're probably going to be a bit starstruck and be like, oh, cool, we're meeting. Meeting the guy who makes the great music. This is cool,
Yeah.
But it's difficult to do that. But I think with YouTube content, especially if you're making political arguments, it's actually a lot easier to do that. I think you can just draw lines. You for a start, I think putting yourself on camera is one. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of the time I've stopped doing it because I don't want people to be thinking of me when they're watching a video. I want them to be thinking about what I'm saying. Yeah. That's all I really care about. I don't want them to be thinking, oh, it's Andy. I want them to be thinking, oh, it's a set of arguments which I may or may not agree with. I will stop trying to tie them up to me personally. A lot of the time I'm trying to reference other people, like big academics or big thinkers in these fields. I'm trying to sort of get people to understand there's a whole, this isn't just me giving you my hot take on this latest subject. This is actually me trying to point you towards things that are that might be of interest. The great thing about academia as well is you buy an academic book, it doesn't have a picture of, typically anyway, of the author on the front doing any kind of pose or anything like that. I mean, there are some sort of exceptions. Like we all know what Noam Chomsky looks like because he's kind of a rock star academic. He does all these tours. He's become kind of, which is itself a bit of a problem with him, I think. But one of the great things is a lot of academics I've referenced when I've written stuff, I don't know what the fuck they look like. I don't know what the hell they're like to know as people. They could be the nicest or not nicest. I don't care. As long as their arguments are coherent and they make sense, they're well researched, well cited, that's all I care about. And that's brilliant. That's perfect for me.
Yeah, I remember I read Nina Licky's book, Feminist Studies, cover to cover. Didn't have a clue what she looked like. I wanted to reference her because I wanted to say that the reason I started doing my audio over images style rather than vlog style is not because I was worried about that. It was because I thought one of the reasons I started my channel is because women's history is so invisible. And people like Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, who should be ridiculously famous for all of her accomplishments. Nobody knows who she is, and it's a travesty. And so I thought, rather than just having my mug up on the screen for half an hour, I could show hundreds of photos of important women from history who are invisible and make the point that because people don't know who they are, they'll be like, oh, who are these people? It kind of makes my argument for me. It's like, yes, this shit needs to be better known. And so that's why I started out like that. But I looked up a picture of Nina Licky because I wanted to put her photo up as part of the of that, and I was like, oh, that's what Nina Licky looks like. And then I was like, wait, I read that entire book and I didn't see a single picture of her or anything. And so you're totally right.
Yeah. I still don't know what she looks like. Yeah.
I'll say the thing that bothers me, I think. These kind of relationships can happen without you meeting for them to happen, for anybody meeting them to form. But when people do things that are very specific, like we've known since the 1950s, that the best way to get this is to, you sit on your couch, you have a cup of coffee or a drink, and you're talking directly to the camera as if you're chatting. That is how you form this kind of bond. And I've seen people who will do that, clearly make a lot of money from doing that, get a lot of Patreon subscribers from doing that, and then turn around and shame their audience for having these parasocial bonds. And that infuriates me personally. Look, you can't have it both ways. And it bothers me that Patreon, which is how people are able to make a living off of these sorts of things nowadays, you have to have some kind of, like, that's all about parasocial bonds. It's all about getting more access to the person who does the videos or who is behind this. It's about, you know, getting time and a special secret, not for everybody access kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it makes me very uncomfortable, but I don't really, like, ideally, if we had like a real left, we could sort of, everybody would sort of pool, and you would just get, there would be like a left Patreon that wasn't individual to individual, but that was sort of like collectively owned and collectively brought money back to people based on what they did or what have you, something like that. But we don't have anything like that, you know.
Yeah. Like a mutual aid fund kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, this is the way I look at it, that if you can accept that a claim like capitalism is bad when ContraPoints tells you it, but you can't accept it when someone else tells you it, there's a certain problem there. And it might be down to the idea that maybe one person isn't explaining themselves clearly enough. But with someone like, say, ContraPoints, I think it's largely down to entertainment. It's like she goes out of her way to make these videos almost like overtly entertaining and has that style. And I think that we can't go on forever expecting everyone to explain stuff to us in a manner that's over like that entertaining or that sort of overtly kind of produced. You know, so at some point we need to, as people, we need to develop the ability to listen to information presented to us fairly straightforwardly and accept it. We can't just sit there saying, "No, I can't accept that. I can't accept that," unless you do a really high-end entertainment video. I just can't accept those facts, unfortunately, because you didn't entertain me in the way you told them. And I think we need to people need to be able to progress beyond that. So I can understand why entertainment sometimes can be a useful tool in education, but I think a lot of people, these aren't just entry points. For some people, they're points of residence. They are staying at this point.
Because my initial hope with stuff like H-Bomber Guy and ContraPoints was that they would be an entry point, and then the people would end up at more substantive content. But because of the divide that happened in the community, that sort of never really ended up being the case. It was the case for a while. Like the clearest example of that is when I made the response to Sargon, and then Harry did another video about the same exact thing that was more entertaining than my one, and then pointed people to my one, and that led to my one becoming a lot more well known. That is the perfect. I hope that would be a trend going forward, like kind of forever. And it didn't really happen, which is a shame. I do want to say that I don't want to throw too much shade at people like Natalie, because they have done more good than I can hope to with this tiny reach that I have, you know, and so
it's more for me discussing like the structural problems of things like Patreon or the structural problems with, if we're doing these very high produced videos are the ones that are, you know, that everybody's eating up. That is throwing a lot of barriers in front of marginalized people who don't have money and who don't have, they're not going to get the equipment, and they, you know, maybe they're working or they're having mental illness issues and it's very stressful, or, you know, all these other things happen that cause that make this very intensive investment into a highly produced sort of slick creation, which is, you know, I'm not saying that it isn't gorgeous when it comes out and that it isn't very well done and that it doesn't have reach. All of those things are true, but I think you have to look at the problems that have been created by that if people are too dependent upon that kind of thing, then you are like, then you end up with what we're having now, which is just a lot of white people.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's the thing. I just think all we've got is these celebrities that are supposedly left wing, that are supposed to be like the counterparts to people like Sargon or people like that. And I I don't see any value in that at all. And criticizing these people is considered very divisive and destructive and irresponsible because it's harming the left, which I don't think it is at all. I don't think the left is a synonym for Vorsh or whoever the fuck he is. That's another person I'm sick of hearing about. I never watch his stuff, by the way. I've seen clips, but I don't give a fuck about him.
Just recently, there's been a whole bloody drama about Vorsh, whatever the fuck you want to call him. I don't know if either of you know about it, but it's the whole this idea that kinksters shouldn't be at Pride because of.
I jumped in on that one.
Yeah.
Again, and I would much rather talk about the issue of it than. I do think that, when you get these big leftists and they're kind of debate bros or they're a little shitlordy, they have to drum up drama, and they have to make these kinds of takes that are going to get a response from people. And that's where the divisiveness to me is coming, that they have to. Like, if he just came out and said a very normal thing, like, oh, well, I think it's good when Pride has, more family-friendly events and kink events, that's fine. There's no, thank you for mentioning how things are exactly right now on every Pride that I've ever heard of, but instead he has to do this very over the top, very prescriptive, this is how it's got to be, and fuck you people for being, or whatever, and you end up with someone like Big Joel had said something kind of like, I don't know, I think that the way that you're expressing this is real, it's just like over the top, and you're acting like if a child were to see anything that could be considered like Shoe on Head came out against drag because it was sexual, apparently.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's not though.
Yeah.
But even I mean, the point of children is they grow up into adults, we still let people take kids to Hooters. Who cares if they're going to go and see somebody dressed in leather at a Pride event? Is that really any different? Is this like something that is particularly terrible or bad or whatever? And it really isn't.
Yeah. And from my perspective and with my background as a historian, for me, I made this point yesterday, is that even if nobody was into the leather community anymore, even if that didn't exist anymore at all, I think people should still celebrate it at Pride because it's such an important part of the history of the queer movement. And those people have done so much activism work that has helped so many people. And who hasn't done that is internet shitlords. They haven't done fuck all. The idea that it's even a debate is ridiculous to me. And it goes back to what I was saying about tying your politics to your income, because I do have to wonder, does Vaush really feel as strongly about it as he as he seemed to be in that video, or is he doing it, like you said, Chrissy, to drum up drama because he knows that makes money?
I mean, I don't know the man, and I'm not pretending to know him or know what goes on in his mind.
Yeah.
I'm not, so that it really doesn't matter to me. But one way or another, it is with him that it's these kinds of takes, and it is with people like Shoe on Head that it's these kind of takes that are the engine that drives the success of their channels, because these are debate channels or shitlord channels, so they need that kind of energy to happen. And so whether or not it just so happens that he has a tendency to be an asshole, so that, great for him, that means he'll be able to have a very successful YouTube channel, because it's just perfect for him. Or whether or not this is a more planned out thing, it really doesn't matter. I mean, the point is, it's very frustrating when you're like, look, just stop, just stop doing this, just calm the fuck down and don't be an asshole and you'll be fine. As a leftist, that's what you want to say, but that isn't necessarily what's going to bring you YouTube success. Obviously, I have no idea what would bring YouTube success, so don't talk to me. I don't know.
I never even monetized any of my channels, so it was not an issue for me.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't monetize either. Well, monetizing is just I tried it once just to see what would happen. It's so bloody complicated, and there's so many arbitrary reasons why they might say you can't monetize. One thing I got with.
I think at one point I looked into the whole AdSense thing. That's what it was called back then. I think it's called the partner program now. But I looked into the AdSense thing, and it seemed very complicated as well. And I was like, the reward I'm going to get for this is so little, and it's not worth it.
Yeah. Well, the thing I got that was hilarious was that I'd get some message if I tried to monetize something saying, "Can you prove you have permission from the person who wrote the music in your video that it's yours?" And I said, "Well, I wrote the fucking music, so I don't know how I would prove that to you. The only thing I can think of is that if someone else claims that they wrote it, then they and I could go to court. I don't know, but I don't know how you prove that at all."
I give me permission to use my song. Hereby.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I mean, all it means is you get a lot of annoying adverts in your videos, and you don't make fuck all. You'd have to have tons of clicks to make money. It's just not worth it. Unless you're getting clicks by the bucket load. It's just
I don't know.
And I'm on Patreon. I'm not trying to act like I am some person who's way above it all. I need to have I'm not independently wealthy, and I do fine. Don't feel bad for me. I used to be quite poor, and I'm much better now, so I'm very happy. But if I'm investing all this time, I do feel like it's reasonable to expect some sort of remuneration from it. The investment of time and energy and life stuff. I don't want to be somebody who feels like I should be just endlessly putting things out for free for no, you know what I mean? I don't think that's I don't make a ton of money off of anything, but it's out there. But that doesn't mean I'm working in these capitalist systems and I'm critiquing them at the same time, because that's what leftists like me do.
Chrissy,
we have to survive.
An important distinction here is that you're the kind of person who approaches this very thoughtfully and thought about it a lot and still thinks about it a lot. Whereas a lot of people, I think, just it's an automatic, it's a given. I'm going to monetize, it's like they don't even really give it a second's thought. And I think that's the dangerous part. There's nothing wrong with needing to survive, in the status quo of the world we live in. Of course. But I think there's a sort of unthoughtful, automatic way a lot of people approach monetization of social media stuff, of YouTube content, all that, and it leads to problems. People think, well, I've got to have a Twitter account because everyone all the professional YouTubers use Twitter to self-promote, and you're cutting off your kind of legs without having a Twitter account. And then they go on to then complain about what Twitter's like. It's like, just quit. That's what I did. When I decided I hated Twitter, I quit. But they can't, because they feel that their income is linked to that. So all they do is just sort of complain about it and use it at the same time.
Yeah. Well, in the case of I think certainly these people like Vaush or whatever, I don't really watch his stuff because everything about him sounds awful, and I'm just sick of hearing his name and everything. But with him, I think it very much is a case of he's doing this as a business, and whether he's conscious of it or not, he just has to create drama. Otherwise, the views go down, the Patreon dollars don't come in. And so you say, you can actually get ensnared in this without realizing it. You end up I think I don't always think when people do this, it's actually all that calculating. I think it's just a case of you like with capitalism generally, we just generally become kind of greedy and a bit hoardish and a bit we don't even realize we're doing it. It's just we're so used to living in a world where we've got to keep tight keep tight hold of our money, or we've got to scrimp and save, or we've got to be a bit mean with our money, because if we don't, next week we could suddenly find we haven't got enough, and we without meaning to, we end up becoming like selfish, greedy people. And unfortunately, I think that might explain a lot of these like left wing, supposed like left wing debate bros or people like that.
I'd say it's even worse than that, Andy. I think people past a certain point almost join the elite classes. Like it goes that far. Like Lindsay Ellis in that video after the cancel thing, saying, "I'm just like everyone else. I mean, I've got an agent on YouTube, and I've got a publicity agent and a manager, and all like that. Nobody has that. That's not normal. You're not like us anymore, Lindsay. You're not."
No. Yeah.
It's very. Some of the recent stuff with Lindsay Ellis has been particularly frustrating. So I'm not going to even start talking about that.
Yeah, we should avoid that. Yeah.
The only stuff of hers I've ever watched was that stuff she did for Channel Awesome, like the nostalgia change.
The old school
I've never watched her I've never watched her YouTube at all. I don't think.
I mean, I've watched her YouTube. She does. She is, to me, more of a film critic with a leftist slant. Or a left-leaning slant, maybe not really leftist. I think that she's. I don't know how she thinks about capitalism. I shouldn't make assumptions, but I mean, when I say, I've gotten, I think, too used to the social media shortcuts of language. So when I say leftist, I'm versus liberal, I'm talking about somebody who is critical of capitalism and wants capitalism gone. Basically, that's all I mean.
Well, that's it. That's the whole generic leftism thing. It's like capitalism bad, what good? Yeah, exactly.
But technically, you could be like a monarchist and
exactly.
by that definition be a leftist. So that doesn't make any. I'm aware that doesn't make any sense, but it's kind of like.
It's the
otherwise you're constantly in the weeds of these conversations with people, and it's like, oh God. But it's a recent thing had happened. And again, I don't know how much of this is conscious or unconscious, right? So Natalie had put out a tweet saying something like, that she was very sad that there was this division with many people in the trans community who just didn't like her, and she really wished she could heal that division or something to that effect. And this is something that is gone from the discourse for the most part. These are all things that I'm not saying they were resolved, and none of these arguments have been resolved about whether or not she was canceled or whether or not, what her takes were or what the issues were. Like, none of that has ever been resolved. But, it's not on the top of anybody's mind. So she puts out the tweet, and mostly she just gets her very diehard fans just climbing on, going, "You're great, Natalie. You've taught me everything I need to know about leftism. You've saved. I was a chud. Now I'm just, it's a miracle, and you should just be happy. And anybody who doesn't like you is just a incredible freak, and screw them." And that's most of what happened. But there were also, and obviously, so more moderate voices. Just like they look at that and go, okay, I'm not going to talk about this. Like, I'm out of here. But there are also a few people. Like, you get, this is the thing about being a micro celebrity. You're going to get all these sort of sycophants, and you're also going to get at least a handful of people that just fucking hate you, right? That's just the way it works. Because you loom too large. You're too much of a public figure to not get people sort of reacting to you one way or the other. So she puts out that, and that's fine. I'm not paying any attention to it, because it's nothing to do with me in any case, is the way I see it. But then later, Lindsay Ellis puts out a tweet, and she's recently had her own "I was canceled," blah blah blah, whatever, fine. And she's saying, well, all these people coming after Natalie, and she put out a totally and it's like, are you guys? Do you just need more money? Like, why is this happening? Like, that's because I can't understand why they're dragging this up and doing this, because it does seem like, if you put out an "I've been canceled" video, you're gonna get a ton of love, and you're going to get more money from people who feel really bad for you.
Yeah.
But there's only so many times you're going to be canceled, so I guess you have to keep doing it. Like, once you've been canceled by people, they've canceled you, and it's over. Like, you can't. They're not going to just keep doing it. Yeah. So it just comes off as very bizarre to me, and I don't like it, and I'm not comfortable with it, and I wish they would just make your videos and do your thing. Like, nobody's stopping you. And you're making plenty of money.
That right there is why I quit Twitter, because I thought, this has nothing to do with YouTube. At the end of the day, it's not about making videos. This is just people arguing in 140 or now 280 characters, going in circles, bringing up the same things over and over again. And the substantive way to make an argument in this community is by making a video or doing a live stream or something. That's how you actually put a coherent, substantive argument together. You can't do that on Twitter. So all that ended up being at the end of the day is just shit fighting and all that sort of stuff. And I had no monetary interest in that anyway. So I was just like, screw this. This is just affecting my mental health badly. And I'm not getting anything from it. It's making me a more hostile person in terms of my interactions with other people. It's just there's no upside to it, and that's why I ended up of the opinion that the only upside to it for people like them is money.
Yeah,
I can't see any other. It just makes people miserable for the most part. It makes them angry and miserable. And it doesn't, apart from maybe kitten photos or something, which you can get from any social media site, or just Google image searching if you really want. There are a few heartwarming things here and there, but there's so much toxic shit that why you would stick around in that place as an always online, super active person. Just, I don't understand it.
Oh, yeah. No, I do think, just going back to the appeal of these channels, like these debate bro leftists or whatever, I think the way, from what little I know about Vorsh, is the way he seems to have marketed himself is that he's like a leftist, but he's edgy. Like, he says things that are transphobic sometimes and things that are racist, and this is supposedly his appeal. It's like all these right-winger types, these alt-right types are like, oh wow, you're a cool leftist. You're not like all those leftists who say we can't say this or that. You're kind of a cool, edgy leftist. Maybe I could be a leftist after all if you can still say all this kind of shit. And I think this, to me, is so counterproductive. It's like, this is not winning people over. This is totally compromising the values you supposedly have in order to get people to identify as leftists, which is this phrase, identify as, that's the same as actually being something substantial. That's basically the impression I get with him. It's trying to make
the thing that blows my mind about that is that people like that, they're leftists, but they don't seem to support marginalized communities. It's like, well, what is leftism to you then? What does that even mean? If you're not going to bat for the people that the status quo fucks over, what are you doing? What's the point of you? Isn't that supposed to be the whole... Isn't that our thing? Isn't that what the purpose of us is?
Yeah. Yeah, it's when people say that they act like the transphobia or the racism of some of these people is sort of a minor point of disagreement. I think no, it's not.
No.
But what you're saying there is it's like, look, this channel or whatever, this Vorsh guy or this shoe on head person, whatever, this person is so important to us that it's worth throwing these people under the bus. Basically, we'll say, well, look, we'll sacrifice trans people so that we can include this dipshit YouTuber as some important figure within our community. I was like, no way, no chance is that happening as far as I'm concerned.
And the thing is, in the real world, it's every time they try to go into the real world, this is what ends up happening. I'm sorry I interrupted you. It was this, of all things, Destiny had tried to convince a group of the DSA that he should be down there because, electing Biden was very important. He was going to come and help them with his magical YouTube powers and whatever. And they just told him to go fuck off. They took one look at him and said, oh, no, thanks. First of all, they weren't necessarily that friggin' interested in electing Biden. They're a socialist group. They're not.
Yeah.
You got to understand. Yeah, sure. We're all against Trump, and we may be willing to do some things to minimize some harms. And nobody's saying that. Well, not nobody. I'm sure some people are saying that not to do that, but that's fine. That's an argument you can have, but that's not it's not like when Biden won, I was like, oh, wonders, joy unto me. It was one of the honestly, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, to go and vote for the bastard, because he's a fucking rapist, and I can't believe I vote. I'm literally voting for a rapist because of a different rapist that I want.
Well, that's the thing, is that the lesser of two evils. Well, Trump raped a lot more people, so it's like that. Yeah. That's literally what it's come down to in American politics now.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Yeah, Trump gloats about this as well. That's the difference. Biden is sort of sensible enough to know how to be a politician. You don't gloat about how you grab women by the pussy. You don't get caught doing that. You don't say the quiet part loud. Biden knows how to be a politician. It's Trump's just blurts all this stuff out. That's really the only significant difference. It's one of them.
And there is a significant difference there. That is important. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. At least giving some kind of lip service to the importance of democracy, as opposed to just, no, I'm in charge now, bitches. Woo! It's all going off the rails, and I don't care. I'm not even going to pretend for you. There is a difference.
My thing with the liberals and Biden is that when you vote for Biden and Biden wins, what you should think is, great, we've stopped the negative changes from happening. Not, yay, now we're going to get positive changes, because that's not going to happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, it was all about harm reduction. That was all that it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I think I said at the time, I don't want to see people celebrating when Biden wins. What I want to see people doing is saying, okay, that's stage one of Operation Stop Us Crashing into the Goddamn Mountain. Now let's actually let's crack on and start making some actual change. I don't want to see people celebrating, because this is not the end. This is not even close to the end of this ongoing disaster. That's actually,
and the disaster keeps going.
Yeah, and that right there is the ruinous delusion. That's what we cynicalists call the ruinous delusion. That salvation always comes from above. That once you've voted and your candidate won, done, wipe your hands, it's over. That's the start. It's barely the start. There's so much more to do. And I think a lot of people, centrist types, will be like, "Yep, job done. I did the thing. I did the democracy thing." It's democracy is actually about people power. The voting part is the most minorly democratic thing you could do is vote for an electoral candidate. That's as people power goes, that's not a lot. That's pretty minor.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, of course, but it's like it's not the be all and end all of being democratic. God no.
Yeah, well, like, yeah, so I kind of get what Emma Goldman meant when she was it her who said if voting could change anything, it would be illegal.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
I mean, I kind of get what she means. At first, I just used to think that was a kind of, when I first heard that quote, I thought it was a bit of a defeatist sort of statement. You know, what I realize is, I mean, you can bring about certain amounts of change through voting, but substantial change is never going to come from that. You know, and the ways you can do that, a lot of the ways you can do that are illegal. Like a lot of the things that you have to do to bring about substantial change are illegal, or at the very least, they are. If you want, I mean, there's certain things you can do that aren't illegal, but sooner or later you are going to have to start doing things that are illegal. You are going to have to start saying to the state, "No, I'm not going to do what you think I should do. I'm going to do what I think I should do." So I do kind of get more what she meant when she said that. I don't know if that's necessarily what she meant, because obviously, you know, she said it, but that's kind of how I interpret it now. I sort of think substantial change will not come from participating in representative democracy. Because it's designed not to. It's designed not to. The system is never going to give you an option to destroy it. It's never going to say. It's never going to give you that.
I will say,
option.
And I tried to make this clear in my Rocker series of videos that, like, I think that the anarchists of the Rocker Goldman generation were more militantly opposed to voting than we should be in our time, because they didn't see it bringing any change at all. The elite classes were more nakedly in control of things than they are. They're still totally in control, but they have to do some lip service stuff now. And that lip service stuff, we can take advantage of that, and that can actually turn into something that's actually meaningful to a certain extent. So I think we shouldn't be as militantly opposed to voting as they were, because it's a different time. But at the same time, that quote from Emma Goldman still has meaning in that way and is still really useful.
Yeah, that's how I tend to see it now. I think this is the problem, that we do need new quotes essentially for people to use. Like we often like quote. I will often quote like anarchist thinkers like Kropotkin or Goldman or whoever, and I think these are great as far as they go. But these were, as you say, people who lived in a different time and in a different country. These quotes, so they're still kind of applicable, but we need stuff that's very specific to now if we're going to actually explain anarchist theory to people. It's no good talking about what you would have done if you lived in revolutionary Russia. Because,
and that's,
you don't.
That's what I was trying to do with the Rocker video, especially the second one, is that, like, you know, in that book, Rocker, being an academic, brings up examples to prove his points. He makes a claim, then he brings up evidence to prove it, right? But his evidence is all from like 1902. It's not useful anymore. So I was like, okay, rather than use those examples, here's some examples from like the 80s minimum. Like, you know, that's as far back as I want to go. And like the 90s to 2000s, these eras where it's recent enough that nobody could go, well, that's a different time. It doesn't matter anymore. Like really the 90s was there's just the dusty reaches of history that far back, you know, we can't possibly conceive of 1995. Like really? You know?
I do think that there has been enough of a generational shift that, you know, it has been, to some people, it is hard to look back at the 90s, you know.
Well, third wave feminism barely existed in 95, for one thing.
So I think, you know, it certainly was different in other countries, but in the US, we were still firmly in this anything tainted with socialism or communism is by definition evil, insane, and just a trick by people who definitely want to kill millions of people immediately. You know, like that's just what they're looking to do. You know, and so that's why they're going in for this. And that isn't true anymore. And that, I think, is very good. And I think there's a few reasons that it isn't true, you know. One being that conservatives spent the entire 90s equating everything even a little bit good or popular with socialism. to the point is, if you've heard 57 times that Obama is a socialist, and you're like, well, all right. I mean, socialism can't be that extreme because Obama sure wasn't, like, but at the same time, now we have to re-educate people as to what it does mean, because, Obama might not have been actually a socialist, I don't think,
Yeah, it seems unlikely. If he kept
wasn't
that
very
very down deep, if he was, yeah.
Okay, I'll be back in a moment. I've just got to nip and do something.
Yeah, it's funny with because not only was he a socialist, he was a Muslim too. He sounds like a pretty fucking woke guy if he's a Muslim socialist. Like, some of my favorite people in history were Muslim socialists, like Mina Keshwa Kamal. Man, it pisses me off when I saw something recently. Someone was saying that, you leftists supporting Muslims. It's like, haven't you, like, Muslims are some of the most right-wing people in the world. They haven't contributed. It's like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Actually look into it, man, because there's some really militantly leftist Muslims in the world, and like in recent history and stuff. Sure, other reactionary Muslims tend to assassinate them, but they exist. You can't just pretend that they don't exist. It's like really trashing their memory of people who died for things like that, that really matter, it's just a little pet peeve.
And well, I mean, and it's very frustrating to me. It's like, okay, even if we assume that the majority of Muslims around today are right wing, and I think that's probably a reasonable assumption. Still, like a fifth of the population of the world. What do you want me to just personally go make war on them because I don't like them? Like, are you kidding? No, that's not how any of this works. No, I am not against all Muslims. I would rather that there be less of this whole family of religions that is out there that is very patriarchal. I don't like any of them. If it's up to me, if they come to me and asking me for advice, I will advise them to not be in their religions anymore. But they aren't. And, I still have to, from a more humanist perspective, I'm still going to deal with them as this huge group of human beings who have beliefs and who have ideas that, I have to look at whether I love them or not. I'm not against Muslims any more than I'm against Christians or against anyone else. Not in theory, like in a world where you could just talk to people logically and it would just change their minds about these things, that would be great. And
if the marketplace of ideas existed, in other words,
it actually worked.
Yeah.
But we're not we're not those people.
No.
We're just
yeah, and it's like the people who talk about how conservative Muslims are, they seem to like actually have no real interest in changing things either, because if you want to go into the Muslim world and make it less patriarchal, and you want to work with feminists and you don't want to work with Muslims, you're going to get exactly nothing done. Nothing.
Yeah.
Like zero. They're all the feminists are Muslims in that part of the world. That's just how it is. Like, well, not all, but like 99%.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going to need to be able to work with them if you actually want to make improvements, the kind of things you claim to, to advocate for these people.
And I've talked with Muslims about their belief systems. I've talked with multiple Muslim women about, the things they think. And I know I'm very good friends with Ina, who's an ex-Muslim. And she's great. So like, I get it. I get it from a lot of different perspectives. And I'm not, there's some things that really bother me about the whole thing, but you have to understand that there's only so much that you as an individual leftist can do. So you're going to have to learn to play nice sometimes with huge groups of people. It's the same in America. I don't, Christian evangelicals are my enemy. Like there's no two ways about that. You know, you can't have it any other way because that's how horrible they are.
Yeah.
All of them. You know, like that's part of their things. But I would never go so far as to say all Christians are my enemy. Because you know, there's plenty of there's a lot of people who just they go to church twice a year and could give a shit. You know, like
yeah, totally. I just came up with this term in my head just now, but I think that a term like class Christians might be kind of useful. But like the people who Joe Hill was talking about in the song Preacher and the Slave, which is where the term pie in the sky comes from, where he said, you know, that you ask a preacher, you know, this religion stuff sounds interesting, but I'm starving. Can I have something to eat? And then they reply, you will eat once you're dead in heaven. That's when you'll eat. Then you'll have a glorious bounty. You'll have pie in the sky. You'll have this great harvest. And it's like, that doesn't help me now, you know? And those people were trying to enforce a class system on society where, no, your job is to work and die. Shut up, you know? Those are the Christians I'm opposed to. Most Christians are pretty chill. They're not like that. But those people who they're rigid enforcers of the status quo and, like, you know, end up being massive capitalists and earning millions of dollars and having private jets and stuff. They're no different from Jeff Bezos, you know?
Yeah. The thing that worries me there as well is they can do this so blatantly, even though according to their scripture, they shouldn't do it. And people are fine with it. That sort of worries me. It's like a lack of ability to critically think about the fact that some people can grift so brazenly and be successful at it. Says to me, wow, people are really not thinking critically, and that's far more my problem with religion. It's like these books and things can exist. The Bible, the Quran, whatever, can exist. As far as I'm concerned, you know, they can exist. That's absolutely fine. It's that people need to be equipped to read them critically and need to be able to say whether they agree or disagree with it. And that's far more my kind of problem. Not a case of I really want everyone around me to be an atheist so that I feel like I'm part of the dominant group. Yeah, which is unfortunately how I see new atheism. New atheism is largely a case of I don't feel I can fully enjoy my white privilege or my male privilege or whatever because it's slightly tainted by my lack of religious privilege. So if I can just if I can turn atheist into the privileged group, then I can fully actualize as a privileged asshole. I can just basically go about not having to worry about any of the problems in the world because one of them is sort of affecting me a bit. That needs correcting, but once that's done, basically everything's fine. That sort of seems to be the kind of new atheist mentality, unfortunately, particularly on the internet.
Yeah, well, you could call them class atheists. People who want a class structure where some are privileged above others, which has nothing to do with atheism. There's nothing about a lack of belief in deities that necessitates any of that.
It's and it also really harms. I don't want to say atheism because you can't really harm atheism because by itself it's nothing. But it harms the fact that the people who are most vulnerable to religion and to the abuses of religion are marginalized people, and they're the people that need to have a soft place to fall if they get out of religion, you know. And especially in the US, I can't really I bring up the US a lot mostly because I want to make it clear I'm not speaking of stuff I don't know. Like this is how it is in the areas that I know. We don't have healthcare. We don't have a good place for people who have disabilities. We have nothing for people who have substance abuse, which is a huge problem. And a lot of these shortfalls are taken advantage of by church groups who will come in and give you something. You'll get something. It won't be what you would get in a rational society by any means. You know, you would just get. It won't be treatment. It won't be dignity. It will not be good care. And there will be huge costs and abuses that you will have to suffer through on top of it when you do access it, but it is something, and that is more than nothing. And so you have these marginalized groups out there who are, you know, I've known them, these people who will go to the church, you know, 2 or 3 times a week because they're trying to kick drugs. And, you know, it's all that they have. Like, they don't have anywhere else to go. But no one in the new atheist movement is going to take that on or even acknowledge that is an issue. Yeah. Or if they do, they will acknowledge it just long enough to use it in an argument against religious people and continue to ignore them, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point there as well. Going back to like why I think atheism plus and all this ideas failed is because I think some of the people involved in that were naive enough to think that because the occasional progressive noise came out of new atheists that maybe they actually cared about progressive issues. But it's more a case that they've just realized this is one of the things they can attack Christians with. And that's why they will occasionally say stuff like, hey, you know, Christianity is homophobic. And they almost take that for thinking, oh, these people care about gay people. It's like, no, they just want to be able to attack Christianity, and they've realized this is one of the ways they can do it. That's all. If in terms of actually, you know, fighting for LGBTQ rights or anything like that, like, forget it. They don't care about that because that's actual work. That actually involves putting effort into things. It also involves being self-reflective. Like, you as a straight cis atheist are going to have to actually bear in mind that you are also part of the oppression here. You also are part of a privileged group, and you are going to have to check those privileges. You can't just keep pointing at religion and saying, oh, it's homophobic, it's transphobic, if you don't actually care about that issue. It's not just an excuse for you to bash religion.
Yeah. Jonathan says in the chat, what about class feminists? And yeah, good point. That's one of the things that, like, I tried to push back on my, you know, my original YouTube channel, and that actually is kind of a funny thing because I made a video about it called "Things I Dislike Within Feminism," and Sargon liked that video because he perceived it as me attacking other feminists, and he was like, "Oh, this is good." And he was quickly realized that I am not going to be a friend of his, you know, like, there's not something he can exploit.
Yeah.
Well, Carl doesn't know anything really about feminism other than that it's a thing that doesn't.
Well, because the thing there was he and people like him assumed feminism to be a monolith. So any examples of feminists arguing with each other was feminism eating itself, you know? Like this, but no, it's like we've been arguing with each other since this shit started. Like that's kind of the point in a way, is to debate with each other to figure out what different people's goals are, so different people can be trying to achieve different goals, and lots of different stuff can be achieved. Like it's actually a good thing. It's not eating itself, for God's sake.
Yeah, well, Carl did a video against Julie Bindel once.
Yeah,
and in the mid, I responded to it because it was such an open. You know, he left himself so exposed without realizing it. Because he included a clip of a load of like genderqueer kind of Tumblr type people going on about being genderqueer. He included that in it and said, "This is what intersectional third wave feminists like Julie Bindel are trying to bring about." I was like, I don't know where on earth you know that Julie Bindel is an intersectional third wave feminist.
That video is called "Second Wave Feminists Are Not Third Wave Feminists." Yeah.
Yes, I called it that. Yeah, I was just like going for the really obvious one. I wouldn't normally have bothered responding at that stage of my YouTube, you know, career, but I just thought this is so obvious the error he's made here. It's a perfect opportunity to make this point. These people don't know anything about the different types of feminism. They don't know the difference between first wave, second wave, third wave. They don't know the difference between a TERF or an intersectional feminist. They have no clue. All they know is that these people have some sort of thing against men. You know, some sort of they're not willing to celebrate men all the time. They have certain criticisms to make about men, and that's just bad. And Carl as a man simply cannot stand for that. No, that's really all it comes down to. It is so not even slightly more complicated than that.
Yeah, and it's gotten, if anything, worse. You know, I mean, the tendency to just smush everything together. You know, all of a sudden you have like postmodern Marxist feminist, woke. It's all used as sort of synonyms with each other. And if you say, like, these are the things you're throwing out there can't exist together, or you'll hear them say, well, this is just Marxism without class. That's not a thing.
Yeah, no. So not Marxism. Yeah.
It's like Marx did not invent the idea of power structures. Like, nobody understood that there were power structures before Marx. They just thought everybody had the same amount of power. No, that's not how that worked.
It's really funny with figures like Marx, because obviously Marx is not a working class background, and like the workers in the factories knew full well they were being oppressed. Then some factory inspectors came along and realized that that was the case and wrote it down, and then Marx read those reports and wrote a book about it. Like that, like he didn't discover shit. The people in the factories knew it long before, and they told some inspectors about it, who then was read by Marx. Like, it's the actual workers who figured that shit out before, because they were being oppressed, and it's kind of obvious when you're being oppressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Yeah, it's this use of the word Marxist as well as just a general insult towards everything. It's so childish to me to do that, and so it's so sort of lazy-minded, and cultural Marxism, that's even worse. That's not a thing at all. There is no such thing as cultural Marxism, and worse, the people who invented that term were neo-Nazis. They were recently reviving the concept of cultural Bolshevism, which is something Hitler came up with. It was a propaganda thing he came up with to turn people against intellectuals, to turn people against anything he considered decadent.
I assumed it was Goebbels who came up with it specifically.
Yeah, it probably was him actually who came up with it. Yeah, because he was the propaganda
I think it
guy,
was.
wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been him. But that's the thing, yeah. So when you say cultural Marxism, I say to people, if you genuinely are not a neo-Nazi, drop that word from your vocabulary. Stop calling people cultural Marxists for a start. This is if any dialogue is going to happen at all, if I'm going to take this person seriously at all, get that phrase out of your vocabulary and be a bit more careful how you choose your words, because cultural Marxism is not a thing. It's there are proper words, there are better insults you could use to describe the people you're talking about. Not that I really want to help these people insult anyone, but there are insults that are more accurate that might be a bit better if you want to keep going.
I had someone call me a wokey today, and I was like, "Oh, just leave. Just don't waste my time. That doesn't mean anything." I know it doesn't mean anything. It was a slang term from Avi from a long time ago, of just like knowing the way that having basic savoir-faire about what the hell was going on, and being a Black person who knew what was happening, and that you were getting the shit end of the stick. That's all that meant.
Yeah.
Like that, it doesn't have some grand theoretical basis that you can apply it to me, because, I'm not Black, and I would never call myself. It would be like, that's not a word I would use. It would feel weird and a little bit racist to use it. So if you're going to call me that, I just know you're a joke who doesn't know what the hell you're saying. Are you calling me a person who understands that Black people get a shit deal? If that's all you mean by that, because that's all it means, then sure, but that's a stupid thing to call me,
It's like the whole social justice warrior thing. Like when they started using that term, it's like, you don't even know what social justice means. You're just saying it to mean people I hate. That's all it means to you, is people I hate.
Yeah. Yeah, well, these people don't know. They don't know what social justice is. Also, I think originally a social justice warrior was kind of a term that applied to significant figures within human rights activism, wasn't it? Like people like Martin Luther King, or these people were called social justice warriors. And it was to say these are not just ordinary people who support social justice. These are people who've really done something significant and really got on the front lines of it all. And now that it's just like this reduced to this acronym that people just snark at people, I think, wow, that is so. Talk about rigid. Strip this of all its meaning and just turned it into a. Is there a word for when you do that? When you strip a word of its meaning?
Reductionist, maybe.
Of all meaning and just turn it into a.
Well, they're all just interchangeable slurs. Things like social justice warrior and all that. They all mean the same thing, which is group I don't like.
People I don't like who want to take away my video games or who don't actually want to do that, but
and like the woke scold and all that. It just means the same shit. It doesn't mean anything. If it ever did mean anything, it doesn't anymore.
Exactly. Well, the word in the 80s, I think, was pinko lefty.
Yeah.
To call someone a pinko was just the same sort of thing. It was they generally not meant kindly reference to someone who is progressive in some way, was just to call them that.
Yeah, well, I do hope woke gets out, because I do feel like there's a subtle racism in there.
You're right.
Because of where it came from and because of the way that it gets used. I think that, I feel that, even though it's hard for me to explain what I mean by that, but it just seems like an appropriation of a term and just extrapolating it to this really ridiculous meaning, it just doesn't feel comfortable.
It's like cuck. That has racist origins too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and it's not a coincidence that a lot of their slurs they like to use have racist implications.
Well, cultural Marxism has a lot of anti-Semitic kind of stuff tied up in it as well, because it was viewed as being all of this decadent intellectualism that the Nazis wanted to get rid of was viewed as being tied to the Frankfurt School and being tied to Jews. So
Jewish thinkers,
it does have all this anti-Semitic origins. It's not just a general objection to intellectuals.
Going back to the whole Marxism use of that word, I remember always laugh about the fact that Computing Forever, that channel.
Yes.
Do you remember when he started becoming like a straight up Nazi? At one point, he called Sargon a Marxist for not being far right.
I remember that. Yeah,
it's like you're not as far right as me, therefore Marxism. It's like really.
Well, he is one of those people who just literally does use the word Marxist as a general insult, to the point of it being almost comedic. I think when Kevin Logan did his video on him, he literally just put like a montage together of him saying Marxist. It was just Marxist, cultural Marxist. It's like, this is so like, there were no repeats either. These were all individual cases of him and he eventually converted to Christianity, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yes.
And he converted not because he'd seen any evidence of God or anything, but because he just decided that it was better that we all act like there's a God. That's so absurd. I believe in God because I think it's better if we just pretend there's a God. So I'm going to believe it.
And that's happening, and you can see why it's happening, because it's just it's a way to keep women in their place. Like you don't. Evolutionary psychology is not working out the way that these guys were hoping.
Totally.
So they
Jordan
need
Peterson.
some basis.
Jordan Peterson says like he approves of Christianity because he believes in traditionalism so much. So all the traditional aspects of Western culture, whatever the fuck that means, are things he will support because they're traditional. It's like with no more thought put into it than that. It's like people should adopt a religion for that reason. Does that sound rational to you?
This brings us back to, before when we were talking about how there was this big scare that feminists were trying to infiltrate atheism and turn feminism into atheism and change the definition of atheism. In order to combat that, in order to combat feminists taking over atheism and infiltrating atheism, the anti-feminist atheists, look what they've actually done. They've actually started embracing literal Christians. They've been letting them into atheism to stop feminism poisoning atheism. Fucking hell, how the irony of that is amazing. It's like, thank God we didn't let feminism poison atheism. It only took the alt-right, the anarcho-capitalists, the neo-Nazis, and the Christians to help us make sure we didn't let someone's ideology poison it. Thank God for that. Yeah.
So much
Dawkins had put out, because James Lindsay, I don't know if you know who this is at all. Yeah, you don't want to know. It's he. If you ever heard of the so-called squared hoax, he and like two other people, and all these people are academics, Peter Boghossian and what's her name, Helen Pluckrose. They got together and spent an entire year just sending out fake papers to gender studies journals, and they got some of them published because, you know, one of the issues with journals in general is if you send fake papers, they tend to believe you actually did the things you said you did, right? So, but this was, you know, supposedly proved that gender studies was terrible, and, you know, they got published. And of course, you know, James Lindsay had been a person who was who started and cut his teeth in new atheism, but he could never really break through the ranks, you know. And now he's working for Christian nationalists, right? And they're funding him because, yeah, he hates social justice and he hates feminism and he hates this and he hates that. So Richard Dawkins ends up, you know, tweeting out links to conferences that are Christian nationalist conferences, going, this looks great. They really know what's going on with social justice today. It's really bad. It's like you're tweeting out Christian nationalist propaganda. Like, literally doing that. Get off of Twitter, old man.
Hey, Chrissy, could you talk a bit about Mythicist Milwaukee and your experiences there?
I could.
I know you've discussed this topic before a lot, but I think in terms of this hangout being about the history of the community, I think that was really important. So I think it's worth bringing up.
Sure. Good Lord. What perspective do you want me to talk about it from? Like, what are you looking? Because there was a lot to it, so
that's true.
I don't want to just bore people with like the whole.
I guess from the sort of gender culture war aspect of it, rather more so than the atheism versus anything side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Or
okay.
like the atheism movement having, because at that point when that took place, the atheist movement on YouTube had already been thoroughly co-opted by like right wingers.
Yes. Yes. And so Mythicist Milwaukee is a group that actually started out not just like atheism. If you want to know how they started out, do you remember the Zeitgeist?
Yes, the Zeitgeist movie.
The Zeitgeist movie. That fucking movie, which is, I ended up watching it just to be able to talk. It's just conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
The first of which is, it goes through 9/11 conspiracy theories. I forget the middle one now. But the first one is about Jesus not really existing, and it's kind of not so subtly anti-Semitic in its presentation. And I know that the person who did the movie, Peter Joseph, has sort of moved away from it, and I don't fucking know. But that movie was shit. But it inspired Mythicist Milwaukee, who had this whole hard-on for proving that Jesus was not a historical figure. There was never anybody that we would identify as Jesus historically. It was all made up completely. But they had all these conferences, and they would get big atheists there. And then at some point they started interacting with the chuddy online people, the Sargons, and bringing them over. And it became much more whether they were doing it opportunistically or whatever, it became much more of this sort of gender politics situation. And me, Steve Shives, Kevin Logan, Christy Winters, we had all sort of come out against them, and we're doing these things. And at some point, they did invite me to come on and to debate, and I accepted I did end up going. I felt at the time, and it would be different today, but at the time I felt like a lot of, there were all of these right-wing conferences really coming out. And a lot of people, like you get the Koch brothers, are just spending massive amounts of money putting out right-wing propaganda. And and to a large degree, we still have nothing like that on the left, right? But at the time, it was really there was nothing. And so I had argued with myself about it a lot. And I finally said, well, is it better to just let this go and be completely unresponded to? Or, maybe there's a way that I could at least sort of piggyback off of these. Because basically what they had was, Mythicist Milwaukee doesn't make money, but they have rich donors, or they did, and that's how they got their cash to put on these conferences. They weren't making it off of tickets necessarily. So I went, and I was there. I was there with Aslan Rollins, and we did debate, and I do think that,
Can we stop the screaming?
we kicked ass, but
Is the movie ready?
it may not be. I don't know. Like, I think you can. I am very open to the argument that I made a mistake. Like, I believe that a lot of people think that, and I can see why they think that. And, I go back and forth on it myself, whether or not it was just a ridiculous mistake or not. But, it was something I did, whether right or wrong. It was an experience. There were other people there who were more leftish, but they also did a lot more socializing with the right, and that made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because, like, they had this big party, and Shoe on Head was going to be there, and Armored Skeptic was going to be there, and I was like, I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to go party with them. Like, I'm here to get on stage and say that they're wrong about intersectionality. That's my whole job, and that's all I'm here to do, and not have a big party with people. And that, I met some people that were cool and interesting. One of the things that was interesting is I do think that I had people come up to me afterwards and say, I never had intersectionality explained to me this way. It's like, that's because you just listened to what Sargon said. And why would you do that? But, on the nice side, I did get to sit down and explain. There was a woman, her name was Kimberly Crenshaw, and this is what she said, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like holding up books like I'm the story lady or something. I don't know. Like, anybody could come at me about this, and I would accept. I had people come at me about this before, during, and after. And, it's something, like I said, that I go back and forth about whether or not I did the right thing or the wrong thing in going there. And I may always be going back and forth, because I don't feel like this is always a thing for which there's an absolute right answer or wrong answer.
Agreed.
I think that a lot of these things are context dependent, whether or not there's a point or not a point.
Yeah, I think you did the right thing by not socializing. I think this
Absolutely.
is where people like H Bomber and what's his face, you know, the whole Armored Skeptic becoming mates and having brunch together is that yeah, like you avoided that, which I think is good. I don't think you should ever sort of start trying to become friends with people like this, because yeah, that's when it's to me it's crossing a line, isn't it?
I think so. Like, I mean, to my attitude is I know people that these people have attacked.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
why would I talk to you? Like,
Yeah.
why am I going to pretend like I'm okay with that? Hell, you've attacked me.
Yeah.
I know me. You know, I know. I had run into what the frig is his name? Jeremy the Quartering.
Oh yeah.
Does that? Yeah, and he's that very anti-feminist person, and at the time he'd been making a big deal about the cartoon She-Ra. You know, and he sort of he came up to me, he was like, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Gotten over She-Ra's tits yet?" And just kept walking. Because like,
brilliant.
you know.
God. Yeah. Something I remember Aslan posting was he was wondering whether to go, and he said, you said that they were going to pay for him, like for his hotel and everything like that.
Yeah.
They were going to pay. And I was saying, if I was them, I would be tempted to just get on stage, hear them let the other person make their argument, and then I'd be like, you know what, you're right. And then I'd leave the stage, go back to the hotel, and just totally get pissed on the minibar. Just really rack up those expenses, get absolutely slaughtered, and that would probably be what I would be tempted to do. Like, thanks for the free holiday. I don't know. That's what I would have done if.
Well, the other thing, I don't know if this was a factor of your thinking or if this was something that people brought up, but one of the things because this was after I'd already deleted my channel, this happened, so I wasn't really involved in it. I wasn't really on YouTube at the time, but I remember thinking about it, that it's cool that you and Aslan got to hang out.
It was cool.
Yeah, and
like.
And it wasn't like something you had to pay exorbitantly to make happen, you know? So
I wouldn't have paid a dime. Like they didn't necessarily pay me. Like I think they paid me something like they paid me like a few bucks, but they did pay for the plane and all that stuff. So, but yeah, like I got to meet them. I got to meet Vadim. Creationist Cat, or who used to be Creationist Cat. He's there. He's a nice person. I got to meet the Messianic Manic, who's very nice.
Yes, I like him. Yes.
Yeah, he's real cool.
He's one of the few. He's one of the few sort of YouTube atheists who I think is actually pretty good and who's actually kind of stood the test of time quite well.
Yeah, one of the things I think it's important to I don't know, point out or whatever is that there were some people who started out on the anti-social justice side who actually listened to our arguments and realized that they had merit and changed sides. And people like Vadim Newquist and Spinosaurus Kin, David Sherratt, those people, I really think it's important to celebrate them, because that's like, they did the same thing Steve Shives did, but like at an even more precarious way in some ways, because they were deeply entrenched into that mindset at that point and had to rip it out of themselves. Where Steve Shives just basically he resisted it ever becoming entrenched in the first place. These people let that happen to them and then had to like deprogram themselves. And so I think that's worth worth celebrating.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I think eventually as well the bout, like the straw that breaks the camel's back is the phrase I'm looking for. Eventually, like no matter what the the cost. I think sometimes you just look at things like I've had these moments in my life where I think this is wrong, and nothing at this point. It's impossible to pretend otherwise, and I'm walking away from it. This is a terrible thing, whatever, that I've invested myself in, and it's time to cut and run, basically.
And so 8DX in the chat just brought up Dusty Smith. He's the perfect example of this, because Dusty had to look at his own actions and his things he had said, and said, I have said some horrible things that are just toxic, and I need to really look at what I've said and take a lot of this shit back and change. And that's something that's got to be admirable.
I do. I think it is. I give him kudos for, because he didn't need to. He had a comfortable.
Yeah. He
living.
halved his audience. When he did that, he lost half his subscribers.
Yeah. And he was like, have fun.
Yeah, it was quite sudden as well with him. It's like he had that moment of epiphany.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's like the light came on, and he was like, "Hang on a minute, I've just sort of realized what's going on."
It was a bit different with him than it was for Spinosauruskin, because Tim and I basically had a Twitter argument with Spinosauruskin in which we provided him with some really good arguments and evidence and stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, you guys are right. I'm done." But with Cult of Dusty, I didn't have an argument. Nobody had an argument with him. He came to it just totally on his own, because he realized that this shit was getting infested with Nazis. And he's like, if our movement attracts Nazis, what does that mean? That's got to mean something really bad,
Yeah. He streams. People are asking about him. He does a regular stream.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I was very surprised when it happened, simply because of how quickly it happened. I think like the week before, he'd been doing one of those questions for SJW type videos or something. I think must have been it literally almost was just immediately after he completely turned about, and it seemed like very sincere as well. I didn't get the impression he was trying to do anything crafty. He just generally thought. I think he just sort of realized, hang on, this is so like the creationist community was back then. That's kind of what we've suddenly become like. We've started not caring about evidence and only caring about our beliefs, and we're only caring about what we've invested ourselves in, and we're rejecting academia as some sort of thing that's insidiously controlled. I mean, the creationist argument is always that academia is insidiously controlled by atheists or evolutionists, and therefore that's why no creationist stuff can ever get peer reviewed, because it's being silenced by these insidious atheists who control academia. And then the anti-feminist argument is basically exactly the same, except it's saying that the academia is insidiously controlled by leftists or feminists or whoever, and it's exactly the same argument. It completely comes out of nowhere.
It's Carl Benjamin's petition.
Yes. Oh God, that.
I'd forgotten all about that.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
I like what Cameron said about that for a little Libstock rants. He said something like, this petition isn't going to be handed in anywhere. Like, if you at least addressed it if you sent it to somewhere like Goldsmiths, at least it would be handed into the paper shredder.
It literally had no address to be submitted to or anything.
To universities.
Yeah,
all of them.
It just said university campuses. Yeah, it's just.
Please stop teaching stuff I don't like.
Yeah.
In the signed someone who cares about free speech.
Free speech and skepticism. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, he freaked out. He freaked out because these courses have the word social justice in their title.
Yeah.
It's like, but Carl, you don't know what that means. You've taken on the internet understanding of what that means, not some weird concept about. It's actually a fairly normally accepted thing in most areas of mainstream politics. Most people, even conservatives, sometimes say they support social justice. They don't, but they say they do because they don't recognize it as a dirty word. you've taken on this internet scaremongering idea of it, and then you see a course with that in the title, and you freak out.
Yeah.
It's come on.
Getting high off your own fumes.
On the
No.
on the subject of Cameron, of he
Yeah.
called, his channel is called Libertarian Communist Platform now, not Libsock Rants anymore.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
But,
nowadays. Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to bring up a lot of figures from the community in this and sort of celebrate them. And one of the people I think is really important and worth pointing to is Tom Avella, who also goes by Taylor Monica. Because Tom Avella was kind of like a bridge between the feminist community and the anarchists. Because Libertarian Socialist Rants wasn't really part of the community to begin with. But people like Tom Avella, who came in and were both feminist and anarchist, both vocally so, I think really helped forge those two groups in together as one group. People like Anarcho Pack and Cameron and stuff, who Zoe and Cameron, who weren't part of the community but who were aligned in a lot of ways. And yeah, I think figures like Taylor were really important in that.
Yeah.
Well, should we wrap this up?
Yeah, if you're happy to, yeah.
Well, it's getting pretty late for you, right?
Yeah, it's about half midnight now. So.
Before we go, Jonathan, I've been able to I've got the chat on my phone now, so I've been able to look at it. Jonathan, can you put the links in to the chat that we talked about? I just wanted to make people aware that two of our comrades in the community are in need of some mutual aid at the moment, Johanna and Phoenix. And
yes.
Jonathan's going to put some links in the description where if you've got any spare cash lying around and think you could help out, please consider doing so. All right. And free Cascadia. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Do you know about the Cascadia movement, Andy?
No, I don't think so.
I've become quite a big supporter of that. It's the idea of breaking off the states of Washington and Oregon and forming them into their own country with a chunk of Canada.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because Portland's very anarchist, so it's kind of an anarchist movement.
Oh, cool.
Well,
I will look into that.
I hadn't heard about that, but that sounds great. I'll move. Oh my God. Are you kidding?
Well, I think Jamie in the chat would probably point out that Portland has just as much problems with Nazis as the rest of the US, but there is also an anarchist presence there. So, yeah. Do you guys remember the train stabbing? I did a video about it, about horseshoe theory, about some ridiculous centrist who thought that guy was a leftist. Yeah, that happened in Portland. So there's still Nazis in Portland, but
a lot of them though. A lot of them bust themselves in because they know that they can start a fight and get somebody to fight back.
Yes,
so.
Yeah. Well, they don't necessarily might live in the surrounding parts of Oregon and Montana and whatever, rather than actually in Portland. Yeah.
But I'm sure that there are people in Portland as well. But
But yeah, like if I was gonna live in the US, that's where it would be. But I'm not gonna live in the US because I'm actually banned from entering the US.
Oh, really? That's weird.
Yeah. Long story from a long time ago. Well, thank you everyone for coming along and watching. And thank you so much to both you, Andy and Chrissy, for taking part.
No problem.
And I
Thank you.
I apologize for all the technical issues, but it's not really my fault.
It's YouTube.
I know.
100%.
Yeah, I said to Andy before the hangout that I remember tweeting in 2016 that every time YouTube updates itself in any way, it's for the worse. That the change is for the worse. And that is still true. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And
Cool.
Farewell.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.